And we're live.
There it is. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Morning Ritual. I am your kind of awake host, Noir. I go by Hive. I don't
And,
remember how to start the show.
and I'm your other more awake host, Anita, because I've been up since 7 in the morning with a cat that has screamed at me to wake up for food.
Oh no, you got one of those too. Mine's a dog who insists on his walk, but yeah, no sleeping in with him.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we've got an amazing guest for you today. Tom, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Tom Nelson. Most recently, I've created a player safety tool for the RPG industry called the Deca Player Safety. But my RPG story goes back to a very cliche in that I am as old as Dungeons and Dragons. I'm 49. I'll turn 50 next year. And I was the kid with the older brother who had the first edition books, who would never let him play and join into their fun. But when I could, I'd steal them away, read through the books. I think that really launched my lifelong interest into the fantasy genre as a result. I can remember like hiding away in a dark room with I had this book reading lamp, and I imagined it was a candle, and I'd be like reading my D&D books by lamplight, and just letting my mind go wild. So it stuck with me most of my early life into high school. Buddies would come over. We'd plan to stay up till dawn playing D&D, and I don't think we ever made it that far. It's always a good plan. You didn't have the energy drinks back then, and coffee certainly was not a thing for us in high school. But we loved it. And I still am good friends with a lot of those players. And that's one of the beautiful things about TTRPGs is the friends you make and keep along the way. So
Heck yeah.
I ended up going to Georgia Tech for school, where being in engineering school, I, for some reason, tried to distance myself from my inner nerd. And really dropped
As an
off
engineer, really?
I know
That was the choice.
I didn't lean into it. I really should have. But yeah, I was more concerned with trying to be cool in an engineering world, which isn't that hard, really. But no, just kidding. So I didn't play for the longest time, and after some job moves and coming back to Atlanta, my old high school buddies said, "Hey, 4th edition just came out. Let's give this a try." And I'd see them start playing, and man, I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, "You guys, this is just too nerdy, guys. This is too nerdy." And then I started playing, and it has consumed me and most of my time since basically 2005. There's a meme out there somewhere with this guy dressed as a wizard, and it's got all these stars, basically some bed sheets or something turned into a wizard outfit. And it's like, I'm that guy now. My friends remind me of that all the time. Like, remember you used to make fun of us, right?
Heck yeah.
Now you're one of us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the Deck of Player Safety, and maybe a little bit about what inspired you to make it.
Absolutely. So it really was the light bulb going off over my head as a player safety tool. So what the deck is, is it's a standard casino style type card deck. And the principle behind it is that you're trying to avoid topics and those feelings that may be associated with them before they happen. So the existing tools that are out there, Lines and Veils, X cards, etc., they're great tools in their own right. But I found that they were all after the fact, after the feels happened. I run a couple of home games, and with those groups, very familiar, very comfortable. You do session zeros. We establish our guidelines beforehand. But when we can't meet, if we go a couple of weeks without playing a home game, I need a fix still. So I'll head to my local game store and I'll run games, usually for new players, because a lot of the in-store games have ongoing campaigns, but there's always the stragglers who are just trying to get in for the first time. And I'm like, give me all of them. I love introducing new players to the hobby.
Yeah.
And what I found in using the X card in game stores was it was, again, always after the fact. And sometime early February, I had somebody use the X card, and then I rewound the situation in my head, and then I could visualize almost their uncomfortableness building before they hit the X card. And that made me think there's got to be something better to be able to avoid that situation, because a lot of the most challenging part and a fear of a lot of people is having to step forward and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable. I'm feeling something I don't like, especially around a group of strangers. So that's where the inspiration came from. And therefore, the mechanism I came up with was the idea of, combing through all of the potential sensitive topics, hot buttons, I like to call them, that could trigger uncomfortable feelings in somebody, and also that are frequently encountered in a TTRPG. And I came up with a system where in the 52 cards, about 30 of them are hot button topics. So you've got things like yelling and shouting. Perhaps somebody grew up in a home where raising your voice could set off some uncomfortable situations. Mental illness, of course, is a strong one. Sexual innuendo and flirting. And then there's the common monster phobias like snakes and spiders and things like that. But mixed in the deck, we've got a bunch of anything goes cards. So there you go. There's one right there. Oh, it's on now. We're going all in on this discussion.
Yeah.
But so what makes this system different is that, one, it's fast. So it is currently, being a physical deck of cards, it's for live play or real life play at a table with strangers or friends. But it's very fast. So when you're at a game store running one shots or running, whether it's Pathfinder Society, Adventures League, or any other TTRPG, or at conventions doing the same, frequently you're sitting down with strangers. There's no time for session zero. You don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about you. And you're always crunched for time running a game at a convention. So I wanted something that was going to be quick and also not a burden for the DM. So there are some mechanisms I can go into later about how I try to unburden the DM in this process as well, to make it enjoyable for them too. But the other thing was, I wanted to make sure it was anonymous and to head off problems before they happen, and make sure that those people who need to have a voice can do so anonymously without stepping into the spotlight. So the way the mechanism works is that after a brief explanation about, hey, I'm using a safety tool, please peruse the deck, pull out anything you don't want as content in our game or behavior around the table, because there are cards like flirting or swearing that can be encountered at various games. And then you would just draw any cards that for topics you don't want in your game and hand it off to the next player. If you are an anything goes player, you would just draw that anything goes card, so that you are turning in a card, which keeps it anonymous for everybody. So everybody has to select at least one card or more. Exactly. That's one of the tools to help keep it easy on the GM. Try and take some of that burden off of the GM.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you've got a couple of these to hand out to your players.
Right. So as the players sit down, you would hand those out, and the QR code takes you to a lovely video of me explaining the rules. So the GM doesn't have to repeat themselves, doesn't have to.
I did know.
Yeah.
I completely forgot to think about what the code could be.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you've been watching it a few too many times, a little strangely too many times there, Noir. But no, the QR code. The whole point of that is it takes, as your players are sitting down, they can scan it. It gives them a 65-second video or 70-second video of me explaining the process. Silently review the cards, pick any topics you don't want included in your game, and then pass the deck. If you're good with anything, select and anything goes. Yeah, exactly. So then the GM would collect the cards also without looking at them. So the person, a lot of times you have, for a longer campaign, you may have a check sheet of this is what I don't want in my game, but you're still confiding in your GM. These are my concerns, which again, if you're friends, long-term games, hopefully you have that degree of trust where you can have those discussions. But
well, see, that's almost a safety tool in itself, is when you know someone well enough that you know what topics not to broach, right?
Right.
And so many old school grognards will say that, like, I've played with my group, so I know all of their icks, and so I know to avoid them. Like, well, you're implementing a safety tool.
Yeah.
See, I would be careful with that, because people change, and life experiences change people. So I would, even if I played with somebody a lot, I would be cautious about taking for granted what you know about them.
Yeah,
and that's why, like, again, I love this because it's so fast. I ran a bunch of games at Gen Con using this, and just really quickly, like, I remember I was doing a panel. I don't even remember what the panel was about, but I saw Tom, and like Tom had the shirt for like deck of player safety, and I'm like, that sounds like a cool thing that I've never heard of. So like as we were leaving, I was like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, absolutely, because I have questions. And then you showed this to me, and I'm like, do you ever see something so brilliant and awesome? You're like, how the fuck did I not make that? Like, that's immediately what it was. And like, it really has changed everything in terms of, I know I'm going to keep saying IRL games, but this is also available. This is going to be available digitally.
It will be.
Yep, it will be. But like, digitally, I'm a lot more comfortable. There's DMs, and you can like message me your letters and everything. IRL was always where the trouble lies, especially during con games, because you don't know who you're gonna get. And this is such a low barrier for entry that like there's no reason not to be involved. So even the people that are like, "Ugh, safety tools, I don't like them," they can, this is beautiful because it shuts them the fuck up. It's just like, if you're a tough guy, here, just hand me the anything goes card, and we can move on to somebody that will be like, okay, here's what I don't want in the game. It's so useful. It's so fast. I can't recommend it enough. And I think the knockout of this deck is this guy. So
the blank one, yeah.
Yes, this is a blank one that you can have somebody write something that's not included in the deck. Now, the deck to me has everything, but I'm always one of those worriers. Like, but what if we miss something?
Yeah.
And my GM screen already uses dry erase everything for like initiative. So I had a marker ready to go, and I love this deck. I want everyone to have this deck. It's so good at protecting the table.
And I think what it does, it's, the X card focuses on one of the points the X card makes is that, hey, the pre-game discussion about the X card almost brings as much value as having the card present, because you're opening a channel of communication that says we're going to respect everybody's right to have an enjoyable time, and this does the same thing. By doing this exercise, not only are we having that brief discussion and setting a baseline of respect right from the get-go that says we're all in this together and we want to make sure nobody's uncomfortable with the game we play, but it goes that extra step further of, and these are the things I want to anonymously say I don't want in my game, so let's keep those out. I think it's just evolved from those tools that are strong in their own ways, but I'm hoping this takes hold as kind of the reference tool, because like you said, it's very fast. Usually a group like my home group, who I thank them for letting me play tests numerous times and being victims in my little rudimentary demo videos and things like that. They're great sports about it. So with a group like that, all I have to do is hand them the deck. I don't have to say anything. They know the process, and that's like a 2-minute exercise for them to scan it, turn in their cards, and then once the GM has the cards, you review them with the players so everybody knows what to avoid. So if spiders is drawn, your druid, hey, look, you can turn into anything but a spider this game. You know what? Just keep that in mind. Or if swearing, again, if that's drawn, let's keep swearing out of the game if at all possible. It can be tough for me, especially after a beer or two, because to me, D&D or any type of RPG is half craft beer and half hanging out with friends and getting comfortable and letting loose. It does set that expectation that we're going to respect one another. And you're right, the folks who say anything goes, usually in most cases I found that a quick, hey, that may be, if you can respect the process for 2 minutes, turn in an anything goes card, then that'll keep everybody else anonymous. Because of course, if you have 6 players and 5 of them all say I'm anything goes, and the 6th turns in 10 cards, well, you lose, you violate their anonymity in the process. So you just reinforce the fact that may be, just draw the card and we'll keep it anonymous for everybody, and we'll get playing as soon as we're done.
Absolutely. So I told the story in the green room, but I had somebody that put in a bunch of cards for things that they didn't want in the game, and also they put in a bunch of anything goes to remain anonymous. And I was like, you know what? Okay.
But that's, that also brings up a good point in that as the GM, I mentioned earlier that this is also to help take some stress off the GM to make sure they have an enjoyable time, because no GM wants to be at a convention and have to start regulating, stepping in as a parental figure or a boss figure, like, hey guys, don't do that, like having to manage your players. So this can also take that, make it easier on the GM, because again, you're setting those guidelines, and there's nothing against the GM saying pulling cards before you hand out the deck. Let's say you don't want swearing at your table. The GM can load the deck with the behaviors they want to exclude at the table as well. So, because again, the players don't know who turned it in.
Well, yeah.
You just mix it in with the deck and say, all right, hey, I don't want any sexual innuendo or swearing in this game, or not that I want, but that I just gave myself away. But mixed in with the others, they can certainly help mold the game they want to have at their table.
Yeah.
So I do have a question.
Sure.
Will you ever be selling individual cards? The reason that I ask is because I would love a couple more of these.
Yeah.
And the reason being is I would also like to ask, what would you like to see in the game? That way it's even more anonymous in the sense that people will be turning in more cards. I was just taking a look at chat, and Sam had a very great point, which is, for instance, taking away my wheelchair is a big safety thing for me. And that would be great for I would, that's, something I don't want to see in the game. But
right.
They were then later in chat, they talk about, a wheelchair as an attuned magic item. And I would love for somebody to be able to kind of write that request in. I would like a
spotlight card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For things that you
okay,
want to see
that's
in the
great
game.
feedback. Because again, this is version 1 of my deck.
Which is it's already so good. I know I'm gushing. I'm sorry, y'all.
You're making me blush.
I will say that when Mark came back to the hotel after meeting up with you, they literally just gushed about the deck. It's like, hey, look at this really cool thing that I got, and started showing me all the cards.
Oh, that's great.
During Gen Con.
Yeah,
A deck of player wishes. Ooh, I like that, Grade.
Say that again?
A deck of player wishes.
Ah, yes, that would be good. Yeah. Now we got all kinds of spin-offs we could do. I have thought about flipping it around, like the deck of GM improvisation or something like that. Like pick what you want, and I come in planning a game. I've got my session planned more or less. But pick what topics you want to force me to incorporate. Okay, I gotta have snakes somehow. I gotta get a snake in there somehow, even if it has nothing to do with what I've got planned. Got to work it out. So maybe that'll come off.
The morning ritual focus group is on it.
The deck of player wishes. I'm in conjunction with that, my heart would grow 5 sizes, because making sure my players are safe and making sure that they have what they want in the game are my 2 primary concerns. And to just be able to start the game with we don't want that, but we do want that.
You don't necessarily even have to have them as blank cards, because there are common wishes for tone setting in game. Say, I want more mysteries, or I want more puzzles.
Right. It's and it does,
or I want magic items.
Keep it interesting for them. Yeah. Yeah. And though you're right, a lot of the topics can be identified beforehand. The way I went about, 30 hot button topics that I included in the deck, it wasn't completely random. There was a process behind it. It was basically looking at existing safety tools and all the things that were called out in those. But I also went from suggestions of one of my players, Anne. I went to some, literary review websites where they would discuss how do you, label warnings and things like that for content they're reviewing, and all the various topics in there. And then basically came out with a long list of all these topics, and went through with my players in both groups to evaluate, okay, swearing, how often does it come up in TTRPGs? How big is the impact? Now, impact, actually, initially I started with that, and I took that out. I was like, we can't worry about impact because that's individual, right? It may not impact me very strongly, but it could have a very strong impact on you. So I ended up just focusing on what's the real frequency here. How likely is this to happen? You know, alcohol, every tavern is going to have alcohol, right? So, but then some topics in some of my playtesting, people were like, oh, I'm surprised I didn't see clowns. And although clowns can be a very strong phobia, they just don't happen very often in TTRPGs, which does bring me back to the blank cards that you were showing. So they do have a dual purpose.
Yeah.
That blank card is, I initially kept that in for the GM to be able to add something that may be specific to that session, but not very common. So clowns, for example, if I'm running something that, you know, I'm going to have a jester or, you know, puppets. I've run some sessions where I've had animated puppets and dolls and things like that, which could freak people out if you've seen one too many 80s horror movies like I have. But that can allow the GM to then add that as a topic to the deck for that session and allow somebody to choose it. But also secondarily, you do lose anonymity if somebody's writing down something, but it could serve that purpose as well, so that people could add in things that they want. Now, on the flip side, you could give one to everybody and they could write in anything goes as well. But that could slow the process. There's some, you know, the mechanical side of things, that balance between this is a helpful tool versus a burdensome tool is what I was striving for.
I've got I've got 2 stories about using this at Gen Con, actually. So one game I played and we all took everything out. Like they took out the things they didn't want to see in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I was running a module that had cannibalism in it, and we played the game, and there was a kid, and this was my first time running the module, and I've ran across the cannibal stuff, and I'm like, oh boy. Luckily the parents were cool. And the little kid goes, what's cannibalism?
Oh man.
And I see that like everybody at the table had 1,000 yards stare. Like it's eating really bad food.
Yeah, here's a parenting moment opportunity for you right there.
So
Dad.
the next game, what I did was I pulled out all the things that the module had in it.
Right.
And I was just like, okay, so this is what's in the module. If you want it out, you know, I showed them all what's in the module. Then I shuffled the deck again and I passed it. And I was just like, keep in mind what's in the module. If you don't want that in there, feel free to take it out.
It's a good place to note that, you know, if you're running a session that is Temple of the Spider Queen and you're going to fight spiders the whole way through, of course, that should be made known well before people sit down at the sign up time, you know? So you're not going to, you know, I wouldn't expect a GM for somebody to pull the spider card and now their entire session is destroyed. But if you had a spider encounter, it's easy to swap it with a snake or an ooze or a construct. And actually on the website for the Deck of Player Safety, I've got a real quick reference guide. Like if this card gets drawn, here's a quick swap, you know, real easy swap to substitute in.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
handy.
Taking that burden off of the GM of how do I implement this without it being too much of a hassle. So if something really does impact your game, you can go to the website real fast and be like, here's a quick idea, or it may generate some other idea for you. You know, that you see an appropriate swap without really changing your story. It's just, hey, everybody can kill an ooze guilt-free, you know? just substitute ooze for everything and you're fine.
I made the mistake of replacing a spider with a slug once, and they beat the boss by casting create food and water, and they just created so much salt. I was like, shit!
I've been foiled by science.
Fucking science!
Yes.
Foiled by science is just Sam DeLev's origin story.
All right, so we're gonna come back to these cards, but we do.
They
have
assaulted it. Thank you, Gray. They.
Oh God, yes.
We're gonna come back to these cards because again, they're amazing, and I want everybody to pick it up. It's very useful as a tool for a player and a GM. Like everybody should have this equipped. but we've got some standard questions that we ask, and I just want to jump into it. Usually there's an order to it, but I'm very curious to see what you would answer to this question, which is: you are the god king of the TTRPG space. You snap your fingers, and anything you want to have happens. If you want a company's value to be replaced with WotC, it happens. Like anything you want to have happens. Right. What three changes are you making to the TTRPG space?
Changes to the space. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't first talk safety tools, right? I would wish that the speed at which safety tools are adapted and accepted into and normalized in play, just that speed would accelerate a lot quicker. Yeah. The way I see things right now is that everybody, of course, my initial focus was on Paizo and WotC. They're the biggest, right? But as I went to Origins and Gen Con and approached much smaller game producers, maybe they're running 4 games and that's it. But they still had a strong focus on a safety tool, and they wanted to talk about it and see what they can do to implement a good tool. So my view of where things are going is that sooner or later it'll be eventually the norm to incorporate some sort of safety tool out there, and that people will accept it as this is part of the game now, and happily accept it as such. I just wish we could get there faster, and hopefully discussions with you like this help keep spreading the word and bringing people on board faster. So
we're preaching safety tool every chance we get. So heck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be my first. The other thing, and I think having launched a product is the first thing. I'm a corporate sales guy. I deal with heavy equipment. TTRPGs and D&D in particular has been, my hobby and my social outlet for, well over a decade now, consistently. But I am not a TTRPG, producer or, specialist by any means. So this was the very first thing I've ever put out there. And what I came to appreciate in that is really the effort that producers go through to get their vision out. So I think what I would change isn't so much about the industry producers, but the audience, in particular the online audience, saying, look, understand that, success is not a finite quantity. You don't have to poop on somebody's vision because you don't agree with it, or you see a competing one that you like better. They both can succeed equally, and have just as much opportunity to grow. Although, time and money, of course, are finite, but again, from the consumer side, you don't have that at stake. So if you're not building people up, you're tearing down, and I think that if people could understand that, encouraging people just for putting themselves out there, is worthwhile and supportive. And there's literally no skin off your back to do so, because it's just, you're just comments on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So I really the audience would be a little more. And not that I took much backlash. The biggest thing I faced in putting this out are the old grognards, who are all my age, of course, because they grew up on first edition, but who were like, safety tools, I don't want people like that at my table. And that's, to me, I'm like, you just called out your hot button topic, which is safety tools. Like, you felt like you had to say something and react to that because it created some feelings in you. But yeah, maybe think about my comments to other creators and seeing stuff out there and just looking at it a different light. Everybody can win in this space. And then I think you said you got 3 wishes, right? Where's my genie bottle? Yeah. I can remember the first time I attended Gen Con. That was the first big convention I ever went to. I mean, it's the biggest, right? And it was 2015. So right when 5th edition was rolling out, I was really getting into the hobby. And I wish you could bottle that feeling. So someone can make a perfume or a beverage or whatever, bottling that feeling when you get into a space like that, where you're surrounded by your fellow nerd family and everything feels right, to be able to embrace that and carry that with you. Because that Monday when it's done, you get the post-con blues set in. And you're like, oh man, I wish I could
That
take this.
post-con depression hits
I know.
hard.
It does. So yeah,
especially
maybe
when it's combo with con crud.
yeah, this is true. Maybe that's the memory you get, but it's something to take that with you. Now you can get that at a game store too. You know, you go to the game store for 4 hours a week and do something. You can get a little dose of that, but just as long as nobody makes a candle that tries to capture that essence. We don't want the con smell.
Con in a can.
Yeah.
Con.
But I do just remember that this is where I belong, feeling. And it's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
If anybody hasn't been to a convention, big or small, go to one. It's such a good experience to get that feeling. So that would be my third thing, I think.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one. That's such a nice, wholesome answer. I feel bad about the next question.
Oh, nah, bring it on. I need to. It's
Let's bring this down.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Let's get edgy.
So, in the TTRPG space, there is a war between those of us that see these little guys as storytelling implements that you roll, you get a number, you see the result, and that's the end of it. But there are some people that see these as the forbidden candy to put into your mouth and crunch. Not crunch, crunch. Now, I am aware that there are edible dice. But if you put an edible dice in your mouth and eat it, that's called crunching. They don't want to crunch. They want the inedible so they can crunch it. My question to you is, what side of this war are you on? Are you a cruncher? Are you an anti-cruncher? Or are you somewhere in the middle?
All right. So, I mean, I guess I'm in the middle. To answer your question, I'm in the middle.
No!
And the reason, I know that's non-committal. But I think it's disgusting. Okay. Germs, are a thing, and your dice go in all kinds of weird places across the floor. Other people are handling them. It's bound, the germs are flying off as they roll across the table. Yeah, that's gross. I am not one who would partake in that. But I do have what's the right word without it getting sexual? Well, because the only term that comes to mind is like an oral fixation of sorts with certain types of foods. So to be very specific, certain types of foods. I grew up for some reason. All right, here's real confessions time. I don't know why, but when I was a little kid, I would eat chalk. I would take a stick of chalk and I would just chew through that thing. So even to this day, anything crunchy, Italian breadsticks. I don't eat chalk anymore, just to set the record straight. Want to be clear, that phase ended. Once they got the non-toxic kind of chalk, the buzz went away. No, just kidding. But anything that has that chalky texture, I will just eat day and night, like breadsticks. Certain candies that have that. Necco wafers, which they're old-timey candy that very chalk-like, but. So I get the idea that if that reminds you of something or takes you somewhere that gives you a reason to do it in the privacy of your own home, So I guess my position is, in public, I don't want to see it. Please don't do it at my table. But whatever you do in the privacy of in your own home is your deal. You can do that at home.
Sam was saying that and I just looked it up, that the compulsion to eat non-food items or swallow non-food items is called pica. Pica?
Pica?
Yeah.
Huh. I did not know that. Speaking of swallowing, speaking of this takes me to another place. Speaking of swallowing non-food items, so I was like 3 or 4, I can't remember what. I gauge time by where was I living at the time. So this was in Chicago where I was born. We were living in Chicago till I was 4, so 3 or 4 years old. I remember going around with my parents. It was a construction site. I think my dad had something to do with an apartment building. He was involved in it to some degree. Anyway, electrical boxes for light switches, things like that. Usually they're made out of metal, or at least they used to be. And they would punch out metal discs that look like quarters in order to feed the wires through. So these little things are all over the place. So even at like 3 years old, I was collecting silver. I was like, give me this. I was picking these up all over the place. And then one day I'm at home with just my older sister who was like 9. My mom, it was the 70s. Parents would leave you alone and, didn't use seatbelts and things like that back then. The arm across the chest was enough. But I'm alone with my sister and I put one of these things in my mouth and I'm just playing with it. And then all of a sudden, whoops, swallowed that. And again, these are about the size of a quarter. And it's just a metal disc. And I don't remember exactly, but I told my sister somehow that I swallowed it. And my poor mom had to go for like 3 days. I had to poop in a pie plate. And she's chopping through, looking for this coin like metal disc to make sure.
You see, this is what happens when you enable crotching. We must stop it.
Exactly. So don't make your mom sift through your poop looking for a D20. Don't crotch it home.
Don't crotch it nice.
It did pass, fortunately. She did. You know what? She never saved it. Like if I had it now, that would be a necklace around my neck. I would be like,
it would officially be a part of you at this point.
It has been absorbed. It's pronounced Pika, but yes, Pika makes you think that you shouldn't put a Pokemon in your mouth either.
Yeah, exactly. That was my first thought.
I mean, if Pokemon were edible though, like
what would a Pikachu taste like?
Banana.
Whatever it is, I'm sure it'd be shocking.
Yeah.
Good one.
Because I don't want to get sued by concerned children's advertisers, Sam. Reference to the Canadian skit, Don't You Put It in Your Mouth.
Oh,
I think that might still be. It is a PSA, so it might not be copywritten.
Oh my
Public
God.
service announcement, yeah.
I mean, I could add audio cues to this stream. Anyways, moving right along.
All right, so our next standard question, and this is one of my favorites. You get to play any game with any 5 people that are alive right now. You don't count towards the 5.
Okay.
What does that table look like? Who's GMing and what are you playing?
All right. Because I know some of my players are watching. I'd have to say just them. Actually, I'll see them in an hour, in 2 hours to go play with them. I got to run a game for them, which I'm not prepared for, guys. Sorry. But to answer your question, it's I think going with industry people first. I think Chris Perkins to me is a big inspiration. One, because he has stayed within, in particular, the D&D world, which has been the bulk of my TTRPG experience. But from the guy who was writing into the magazine to becoming and still being, a key decision maker on where the story goes, what they produce. And he just seems like, and I have met him at Gen Con, an all around great guy. So of course, watching him DM for Acquisitions Incorporated or other live streams, it's like, I think I would want to sit at a table with him as the DM.
I've never seen him GM. I'll have to look that up actually.
Yeah, he's and it's not a big voice acting. It's not a Matt Mercer production type level, but it's so genuine. And not that those others aren't. But it's like the around the table with your friends type of GMing. Okay, it's not a big production.
Yeah.
He's just doing it as he would with his friends, and that's how I think it's very relatable in that sense. And it's the type of thing like you want to pick his brain a little bit. Some of like, hey, I love this, but what were you thinking about this? From the entertainment side of TTRPG, I think Laura Bailey in Critical Role has, to me, her comedic timing and her improv is just, I've always thought she really shines on that show. I just think she would be a great person to sit around the table with and play. Because the comedic timing is something that you can be funny, but you can have bad timing, right? And I think she's got both and creates a very interesting character as a result. And along the same lines, and I'm a Critical Role fan. I'm not hardcore, but I do think Sam Riegel is one of the funniest people out there. The skits he does, the the characters he brings to the table, even his live. I don't know if you've never seen a Critical Role or live play, especially the older ones. Well, he'll come out in some goofy ass outfit.
Yeah, with
It's
the
like-
cube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you got to shave before you wear that, Sam. Come on. And I'm not talking about your face.
A lot of
but,
thigh meat.
I do think he's a pretty comedic genius as well. And then kind of on a smaller scale, at Gen Con, I played a game with Elisa Teague. She was the GM. And I'll be playing in her games. I'm going to D&D in a castle next year. So it's my 50th birthday.
Nice.
I'm treating myself. I'm going to D&D in a castle, and I've signed up to be at her table. And having run at her table, I really enjoy it. I think she's got great imagination. She rolls with the players. I'd love to sit next to her and play at the same table.
Heck yeah.
And then, so the last person, I think this has been on my mind a little bit lately. Oh, you may have to excuse me. It would be my dad.
Oh,
So my dad's 83 and he's blind. Wow.
you good?
But he's blind and mobility's really reduced. So when you're blind and you can't get around, there's not a lot you can do. But your imagination is still there. So getting him now, he doesn't get what TTP RPGs are. He knows I'm into it. He knows it's a game, it's a brand, whatever. But I don't know if he understands like this is, you want to play this? You want to try it out? And I really need to at least try and introduce it to him. Because again, there's not a lot he can do anymore. So keeping his imagination going and involving him is something I would want to do. So the caveat to all of this is that I think because of him, my dad, so the game we would be playing would be a Revolutionary War RPG. None of the standard fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. And I came across one at Origins, and this was what got me thinking about the whole idea of trying to involve my dad or find out something to do with him. There is a game called Nations and Cannons that World of Game Design sells. They're sold through them, and it's a Revolutionary War RPG. And I saw that and I thought that could maybe hook my dad. And you wouldn't imagine that there would be one, but I guess shows like there are TV shows now that are Revolutionary War period that are gaining some popularity. But I picked that because, like I said, my dad's 80. He may be 84 now, but in any case, at the bicentennial of the U.S., so 1976, he went full on into American, French, and Indian War, Revolutionary War, and he is just one of those history buffs who knows everything about it. He's collected hundreds of figures and pieces, just like my D&D minis and figures for that. He's got all these Revolutionary War figures that just sit on a shelf and he looks at them when he could see, and get down to the basement. But he's got those walls are covered with pictures and he's got every book made about the Revolutionary War. So anyway, he is a Revolutionary War, hardcore Revolutionary War, self-professed historian. No formal education. But so that's why I would pick that game to be, and I didn't realize even that was an opportunity, because fantasy, he'd be like, how many eyes does it have? I don't get it. But he could relate to that. So this still may happen.
Cool. That'd be cool. I got to check this system out. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I would say through pushing, I mentioned earlier, I've been D&D my whole life, and pretty loyal to the brand in spite of any controversy or whatnot. Just because it was when you watch the cartoon as a kid and that becomes part of your DNA, well, it's hard to shake, right? But by introducing the Deca player safety to so many other game producers, it's really opened my eyes to just like how much is out there and how much good stuff is out there, to where I really do want to start trying some other systems and other genres as well. I just gave one of my players, he had a birthday recently, the Marvel Universe RPG. So I'm hoping he's reading through it, and one of these days, maybe over the holidays, we'll do a couple of sessions of that with him running that, because I think it's out of my element from what I'm used to, but I'm open to trying something new because I think it just broadens the experience.
Heck yeah.
I need to give that system another look.
I think that they've made some changes from the first incarnation.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Oh, so my next question, kind of coming back to the deck, is what what's your dream implementation of this? Like in the next 5 years, where would you like to see this go?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think the industry is going to demand that some sort of player safety tool is there for organized play of any type. You know, the big guys. I think I've sat with Pathfinder and a little bit with WotC. And like you said, a lot of the little guys too, the smaller game producers, they all see it as they need some sort of quality control. They need to be sending the right message that it's a welcoming industry. And a lot of how the deck of player safety can help with that message is that a player coming to a table, imagine they had a bad experience previously. Let's say, you know, somebody was inappropriately, you know, flirting with them or making advances that were unwanted. You know, in the back of their mind, they may be coming to that next table thinking, God, I hope that doesn't happen again. You know, I just hope that doesn't happen again. And this, where the deck can head that off, is that, hey, we use the deck of player safety. If they're familiar with it, they would then know, oh, this allows me to have that voice before it starts, and I can make sure that it doesn't ruin my experience or whatever that might be. So I think that'll put people at ease based on any negative prior experience they might have had. But I do think they'll all expect the use of some sort of player safety tool. And I love your enthusiasm, Noir, for the product. I'm hoping that, not that, you know, I don't think they could mandate necessarily. They may result in mandating, hey, you have to use a safety tool. My hope is that everybody sees this as the most effective one in its speed and ability to actually head off problems. Yeah. That it becomes the tool of choice. So that's what I'm hoping where it goes in the future. And eventually, well, actually not too distant future. So one of my earliest, I kickstarted this in May. I think it was on day 3 of the Kickstarter. Adam Bradford, who was formerly D&D Beyond. He was the guy behind the idea of D&D Beyond. Now he's with Demiplane. He reached out to me on like day 3 and said, dude, I love this concept. I needed this last week, was basically what he said. He's like, I was running a game of Alien, and after the fact, one of my players came up, and like, this would have avoided that right from the start. And he and I are in agreement now for them to do a digital version of it as well. And it won't be a Demiplane specific. So the goal is, and I've licensed it to them for free because they've promised that they won't put it behind a paywall. So for me, it's like, get it out there, make it available. If you're not making money on it, I don't care if I make money on it. This is, again, I've got a day job. This is a pet project that I'm passionate about. And so Demiplane will be putting out their version of it, hopefully before the end of the year. If they do dev updates, and they never really commit the timelines, because in the world of soft, you know, you never know. You don't want to be held to an exact standard, but he is committed to doing it to where it would be a standalone online tool. So you could use it with any online system.
Oh, that's awesome.
That would be web-based. It wouldn't be behind Demiplane's wall. It would be available to use with any online game system, to where the players, whether you're playing online or in person, you would have the same mechanic, the same familiarity of, hey, we know that tool. This is how it works. Let's implement and get rolling.
And I think removing the idea of a paywall for something like this goes miles to making something like this accessible, which is incredible because that's one of the things about the safety tools, is they should be fully accessible for everybody. And the fact that you've made something that's accessible, easy to use, and quick is incredible.
Right.
So kudos to you.
I'll never get rich selling $14 decks that I make in the US. It's, you know, I wanted to make sure I had, you know, flexibility, and I wanted to support a US business to get going. So, you know, I make them in the US. I'm probably playing 3 or 4 times as much as I would if I made in China. Now that could change as volume grows, just out of need. Getting it out there, I've given away more decks than I've sold, for sure.
I mean, they look good. I have to tell folks, like, these they look real good. It's just a standard deck of cards, but they do so much in terms of keeping your game safe. I do want to kind of to round back to something that you said that I didn't realize how true it was until I sat here and thought about it, which is I have tried systems and I have left thinking, "Oh my god, that system is terrible." Not because of the system, but because of the people that I was playing with. So
Ah,
yeah, I can see the value in publishers going, "Oh no, please, please, let's do this." Because
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
I
because from a business standpoint, any negative experience can be blamed on the game. You
yeah,
know, I had a bad time at a D&D table because of the guy next to me, but therefore I don't like D&D anymore.
yep,
Or Pathfinder or whatever game you're playing, Morgborg, whatever it might be. So yeah, from a business standpoint, it's obviously a simple, they're going that way anyway. Hopefully it's just a little push to say that we see this as being the best tool out there.
absolutely. Yeah, my first Zweihander experience, I was just like, I'm never gonna play Zweihander again. I played it again afterwards, and I was like, oh, this is actually good. I just
Yeah.
hated the table. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, exactly. And I've heard on some other, D&D like talk show type things where they, a lot of people talking down about convention play because it is a box of chocolates. The experience you're going to get is widely dependent on the GM
Yeah.
that you don't know, the players around you. And this can be a way to take whatever that median experience is and hopefully elevate it to where in general you're like more likely to have a better experience in an environment like that, because we all love the idea of convention play. Like I mentioned, going to a convention is amazing. So it hopefully it'll elevate that experience.
Yeah, and as part of this, I was doing a little bit of research, and one of the things that I stumbled across when I was looking up deck of player safety and looking up things to ask about is I came across a Reddit post, and one of it was like, "These are safety tools for babies right over my table. What's the point of even having them?" And someone just replied, "Pickup games have entered the chat." It's like, if you know your people, like, it's good at your table, sure. But if you don't want to use them, but if you're playing at like a game store with people you have no idea, like it's always a
Right.
mixed bag. You never know exactly what you're gonna get.
Exactly. And in my playtesting, I've experienced people who thought they'd be good with anything, but when they look through the cards, they're like, you know what? I didn't know that would bother me until I saw it. Because there is another mechanism where people will just hand out index cards and be like, write down anything you don't want in the game.
Yeah.
But okay, it's like, think on the spot of all the things that set you off, and write that down.
Is not all of them are always present in your mind.
Exactly.
Sometimes having that little visual aid to snap you into it and be like, oh yeah, I don't like that specifically, and you can point to the thing you don't like before you even get
pick
to
it out of
that
the
point.
lineup.
Exactly.
Yeah, because things like, I know one guy I talked to at Gen Con, he had like a 2-month-old at home, and as he looked through the deck, he's like, you know what, I never would have thought this before, but now anything with children in distress or harm to children, I don't want that in my game. Or I know of a player who their house burned down, unfortunately, and so anything major fire related, that they had not healed from that yet, and fire and anything burning out of control or was something to avoid, but you can't know that when you're sitting down with strangers. So and even if it's with your friends, everybody has a bad day. Everybody may have something that says
because sometimes if you're having a bad day or something's just reminding you of the bad day, you would need that tool to just be like, maybe not today with this, but later on we'll revisit it.
Exactly.
I like to leave the cards just on the table so that folks can just reach it. Like if this doesn't stop at the beginning of the game. So if during play they're just like, don't love this, they can just reach over, grab it, hand it to me. That it loses the anonymity, but I think there's something to say about the flexibility of like being able to modify the game to their liking throughout the entire experience. So yeah, I love this thing.
I'm so glad you do. And kind of touching on what you just said, so also note that I do include 2 X cards in the deck, because even though there are 30 very common hot button topics, you can't cover everything. So as a failsafe, GM can also employ the X card and say, hey, if it, in addition to what we've just done, anything we excluded, if at any time you want to use the X card, it is available. So trying to cover all the bases to make sure everybody has a chance to voice any concerns before or during the game.
Yeah, there are 2 of them, and I love that, one for the players, one for the GM. because both sides need to be able to call a timeout if something gets a little foul.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
absolutely.
For sure. So I'm excited. It's I want to be at your next game, Noir.
Oh man, I'm I'm looking forward to running a couple of but I just got a new big boy job, so it's gonna be
Oh, no. Yeah, it sucks
I
when real
just
life
started
gets
the
in the way.
corporate life that you were talking about. I'm like, I'm going into it on Monday.
Oh,
But
man.
no, I would love to play a game with you. I I had a thought and then it just went away.
Oh, no.
It's all good.
My brain. No, go ahead.
It'll come back.
It'll come back.
It'll come back to you
boomerang thought.
eventually.
Where did it go?
I'm just trying to think. So your hopes for the Deck of Player Safety is that it gets implemented a little bit more broadly by gaming companies or through digital means and that sort of thing. If you could see Deck of Player Safety featured on any product, any actual play, where would you like to see that sort of viral moment for the Deck of Player Safety?
I would say, the easy one is Critical Role, of course.
course.
They got the biggest audience. If it were to show up there, that would be amazing. And I also think
that would change your life forever.
I do think it aligns with their approach to the game too. I think one of the successes of Critical Role is the sincerity that they portray, in that we're just a bunch of nerds who have stumbled into the success. And they thank their fans for it every time. You see it in Matt Mercer's eyes, the appreciation he has. So, and that the fact that they care for each other and their fans so much, I think it's in line with their message. But I won't take Critical Role as the answer for that, because they're the biggest one out there. I would say, I think Realmsmith, puts out a lot of good, diverse stories. And I have had interactions with Jason Azevedo. I played in one of his games at Gen Con as well, and he is using the deck in his real life games. I would love to see it get on screen. They're not the Critical Role size, but they've got enough critical mass that I think it's a good audience. And again, the sincerity of it. He seems to really like it and what it does for his game, his in real life games, to where it would align well with what they're doing and be a great format or forum in which to see it again.
Wow,
I'm waiting. You always growing up, you'd hear about the rock star musician who the first time they tell the story about the first time they heard their song on the radio. So I guess I'm waiting for that moment, the first stream where I see a deck that I didn't, go out of my way to push with them or, get them to draw attention to it or sponsor it in any way, that they chose to use it because they saw it as the best tool. That to me would be a big win.
I think that's honestly something that actual plays could do a little bit better with, which is showing the tools that they use for safety. I know, we all know that Critical Role and Dimension 20 have safety tools. I don't see them being spotlit, and I would love for them to I don't know, just maybe a little bit before the show, explain, here's how we maintain player safety. A lot of it's been edited out, but here's what we do have.
Like a behind the scenes almost.
Yeah,
that would be great. I think a problem I would face with Critical Role, for example, and maybe even Realms for that, is they're at a scale where I don't think they would mention a brand by name without for free. They've got to capitalize on their name at this point. And I certainly can't afford Critical Role spots.
Of course.
Advertising for spots. But it would, if they did it because they believed in it, that would be even more rewarding. It's we just think it's the best thing. That's why we're talking about it. That would be even more fulfilling than knowing I bought a spot on that, which I couldn't afford that anyway.
I know that they've done that for a few products that they just, believe in, or it's good for the space. And I cannot stress enough how good I think this is for the space. One of the best safety tools is having a safety tool
Yeah.
because if somebody walks through your table like, oh, there's a safety tool, I refuse to sit here. Guess what? It worked.
Yes, exactly. I don't want you at my table.
So like I one of the problems I have, sometimes I'm GMing all over the place, and I was joking before, like I showed you my GM bag. I've got
Yeah.
like my GM screen and all my stuff in it. This is so easy. It's just a deck of cards. Like, so it's so easy to add to the kit. And if you're doing professional GMing, you should have your GMing kit, your notebooks, your GM screen, any figures you may or may not be using, and of course your safety tools. And this is just it's become the grappling hook in my utility belt. Like I don't.
That's awesome.
I don't leave home without.
That's such a great analogy because it's every kid wanted a grappling hook,
Right? Like it's just like when you think of Batman, you think of that goddamn grappling hook, and that's kind of what this has become. Because every time I pull it out, people are just like, "Where can I get one of those?"
Right. Hey, send them my way. There is,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's
I'm trying to make sure every GM has it, especially for con play. I know we keep saying that if you have not experienced con play, it can be the most beautiful experience of meeting like-minded souls that you would never have met otherwise, because this is where your paths converge. Or it could be a hellish nightscape in which a demon has entered your life for 4 hours and you're just trying to endure the time until you can excise them out of your life again. And this helps when it's the latter.
it helps head that off.
Yeah,
you can. I will say a word of advice for anybody who's never been to a con. I learned this my first Gen Con was, time is precious when you're at a convention. And if you're not having fun, it's okay to excuse yourself and say thank you, and go do something else with your time. Because at first, there's time, like you said, times when it's not enjoyable because of various factors. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit through 3 hours of not enjoying myself. Very polite about it. I don't, I just say, look, guys, I've got to go, or whatever, good reason I have without being offensive. I, of course, don't want to hurt anybody's feelings about it. But yeah, don't underestimate how valuable your time is at a convention, because especially your first one, you overbook yourself like crazy.
Yeah.
I've gone to the point where I basically don't book anything anymore, and I just kind of show up to see what's available. Yeah. Just be polite, be friendly, and value your time. But hopefully something like the deck before an RPG will head off those bad experiences. But they're out there.
See, I'm too Midwestern, so I just sit there and take the 4 hours of horrible nightmareness.
Too polite.
Yeah.
I can't escape, so I need it this morning, But we have been at this for about an hour plus, so we're gonna go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, we'll be back with the dark roast. We just call it that, but it's honestly the same as the first hour. We just gave it a cool, spooky name. So we're gonna go be human for a couple of minutes. We'll see you in 10 sound good to everybody?
About 10 minutes, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Good for me.
We'll see you soon.
10.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
We're clear.
All right.
we're
Guest
clear.
check in.
And we are back.
All right.
All right. Let's get back into it.
Dark side of player safety tool.
The dark
We're the
roast.
bad boys of safety.
Is it just like one of those like 90s to early aughts campaigns where it's like, we're gonna make it look cool by making it bad and edgy and dangerous. Safety tools flying out of an airplane on a snowboard for some reason.
You jest, but there was a movie in the 90s or whenever with Charlie Sheen and his brother Emilio Estevez about them being garbage men and trying to make it be super cool. I can't remember what it was called, but they were two garbage men, and that was the premise of the movie.
I remember that movie.
Yeah,
I just don't
yeah.
remember the title.
Not that it's not a super. I mean, we need garbage men. Don't let me undersell the importance
Listen,
of
we
garbage
need
men.
garbage men more than we need CEOs. but-
Yeah, exactly. That's way more important. I do value their contribution, except when they toss my garbage can across the street for some reason when my yard is right here. Like, keep it close, please. I don't have to go get it. But I don't know.
Welcome to the Dark Roast, everybody. Which
Yes.
is our section where we talk about more serious topics, but then we apparently talk about Emilio Estevez movies.
Man, whatever happened to Emilio Estevez?
He went into like directing and stuff. I think he's
Oh, for
still
real?
super successful, and he didn't go down the road of porn stars and bad habits like his brother did. No, I think he's the good success story.
I just love the fact that his brother changed his last name to Sheen. His dad changed his last name to Sheen. He was just like, fuck that. Estevez.
I'm an
baby.
Estevez.
He deserves more respect for that.
Yeah.
Martin, Charlie, and Emilio.
I know.
Wait, what the
Right?
they took a left turn with Emilio.
So,
But
hard left.
they put all of their spice into Emilio. All right, so this is where we have some more standard questions. And
Ooh.
there's a standard question that I often forget to ask, but I remembered it now, so I'm going to ask it to you. If you could take the popularity, the value of one franchise and give it to another franchise, thus draining the previous one of all of its power, what would you swap?
That's tough because you're
destroying one thing and making another.
I mean,
thing
I've made it
stronger.
pretty clear I'm a Dungeons and Dragons brand fan. So in spite of a lot of hate they get, I happily give them my money so they keep putting out more, hopefully good content, I'm one of those people, but like I said, I also appreciate now other systems, and I want to dive into other stuff. I'm not exclusive to WASI content or whatever. Tons of third party good stuff out there. But
Absolutely.
if we're talking franchises, I was raised on kind of the classic Marvel stuff, and I feel like it's so fragmented. And I just can't. I think it boils down to me being an old fart who can't keep track of it all anymore. So it's lost value, like meaning to me, because I just can't keep up with the volume of it and staying on top of who's doing what and where are the crossovers and all that stuff. So it wouldn't hurt me if Marvel at least faded into the background a lot more.
Ooh, okay, so we're taking Marvel's power. That's 20 plus movies. Lord knows how many TV shows, comic books, and a number of video games. Who we giving it to? I think, again, I'm showing my age like crazy. I would love to see like an RPG of the Smurfs. It probably exists out there already. But like the Smurfs making a huge comeback. They tried with some animated movies. You can't do live action, of course. But they did some movies, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. But when I think back to the nostalgia of my childhood and being like, Mom, come sit and watch the Smurfs with me. And of course, I can barely stand the cartoons now. They're so silly. They're meant for 6-year-olds. But I would love to see a reboot of the Smurfs and something substantial coming out of that. The Smurf cinematic universe, I'm here for it.
The Smurf CU. Which actually sounds like something that they would say in a Smurfs movie.
Yeah.
Because everything is Smurfing.
It's all Smurfy.
Smurf finally get her own movie.
The cat was taught to be bad. He wasn't really a villain, It was easy to keep track of.
Oh, God.
Not bad pets. It's not
yeah.
bad pets, it's bad owners.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that's an acceptable answer, but I'm sticking to it.
Listen, that's the funniest answer we've ever got to that question.
Really.
Usually it's stuff like I would give all of Harry Potter's powers to like Star Wars or Star Trek, which
Yeah.
okay, that's pretty cool, but I never would have guessed Smurfs.
Yeah.
I love that answer, and that's making me recalibrate what my answers might be.
Oh man, yeah. I'm hopefully
Huh.
making you ponder life's choices a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, it's you know, Star Wars to me. I'm hoping, you know, it doesn't go. It's headed the way of the Marvel universe where it's fragmenting so much, and
yeah.
I just, you know, I can keep up with it now. Although I'm like, which one's the current season of whatever, and I'm starting to lose track. So, and I grew up on Star Wars. I was in the camp of up until probably 2016, 2017. I was a Star Wars fan, and I did not like Star Trek. No, I did not cross over at all. But I finally was like, let me check this out. Let's see what this next generation's all about. And now, like, I'll go to Dragon Con, which is a huge convention here in Atlanta. And my favorite cosplay, one, because it's so easy, and I make a lot of friends, is I'll do, and you know, I capitalize on my look. I gotta go with the baldness, anything that's bald. So I do Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah, I was just thinking you'd kill it as the car.
And so it's comfortable. It's just a shirt and pants. It's easy to do, nothing complicated. And what's hilarious to me is you'll see tons of Star Trek people out there, you know, no problem. But the way I make friends is I've got this old lady teapot and teacup that I carry around. And when people see that I have a teapot with me, they go apeshit over it. They're like, "Oh my God, that's so
They're all
funny."
gray.
And
Hot.
then, yeah, and then I make friends because I fill it with Fireball, and I'll hand out shots of Fireball to anybody who wants tea. And then, you know, you meet a lot of interesting people that way. Free alcohol definitely makes friends. But so it's and like that's, you know, I've got some other cosplays that are a little more complicated that, you know, but that one's probably my favorite just because it's so simple and you just meet everybody.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Tea, Earl
It's a
Grey,
lot of fun.
hot? No. Whiskey, Fireball, lukewarm.
Yeah, exactly. Room temp.
Oh,
But it's good. A lot of takers. But if you haven't been to Dragon Con, I highly recommend it. It's much more of a party Comic-Con, pop culture, things like that. Gaming is growing, but it's still a very small part of it.
I've heard very good
Um,
things about Dragon Con.
yeah.
It is a lot of fun. It's the beauty of it is it's hosted in hotels. So the convention center hosts some of it, but not much. So the fact that it takes place in these 4 to 5 core hotels downtown means it's 24 hours. I mean, it doesn't stop.
Oh,
You know,
hell yeah.
nothing shuts down. You know, there are raves at 3 a.m. Not that I'm doing raves at my age, but I'm now of the let's go to bed. I gotta walk tomorrow.
Room parties.
But I'll still hit the Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight. You know, they do a live of that.
Wait, they do Rocky Horror?
Oh yeah, they do. They've got
Con, let's
kilt
step
blowing.
it up.
You got to go. You know, kilt blowing is if that's up your alley. You can imagine what that is. So, someone with a leaf blower and a bunch of guys in kilts up on stage. But then they'll have things like the Atlanta Symphony goes, and they'll do an entire set of pop culture, cinema themes, soundtracks. I mean, it's as bawdy or as sophisticated as you want it to be. But it's an all-around good time. It's Halloween for 5 days and a party that doesn't stop. It's great.
You've just officially sold me. I have a friend, Dot, who went to Dragon Con and interviewed like half the cast of Lord of the Rings, and I've never been more jealous.
Oh
in
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
life.
Yeah, it usually brings a bunch of big stars. I mean, this past year, probably some of the biggest were again Elijah Wood and Sean Astin. They both were here this year as well.
I'm so
and they'll
jealous.
fill a hall of, I don't know, 5,000 people or something. No, it's a great time. It's a great time.
That's gonna bring us to our next question, or our next segment rather.
Okay.
And this is TTRPG Confessionals. This is where if you have a habit that you think is less than stellar at the table, this is where you come to confess. We will give you your penance and may you go and sin no more.
Oh man.
Now, I am not one to ask something from a guest without being willing to do it myself. So I will give a confession. You both can provide a penance if you feel, and then we'll move on. My penance is, or my confession
Right.
is that if I lose respect for you as a GM, it's very difficult for me to get it back. I think that a GM is someone that keeps their players' safety and comfort front of mind, and if you betray that trust, I am reluctant. I don't know that I'm capable of giving that trust back to you.
Yeah.
Um,
But to be honest, it's not on you, is it? It's on them to earn it back, right?
you would think.
Yeah.
But that requires a amount of self-awareness that if the GM had it in the first place, we wouldn't be at this crossroads.
Right.
So,
right.
so like, I think my confession is that I am aware of when I need to be the bigger person. I just don't wanna.
I see. I think as penance, I think the important thing is, one, you recognize the feeling. You know it's there. You know the situation. It's not like
Yep.
you're oblivious to what's happening. So being that you can recognize that it's happening, the penance is the next time, pull that GM aside and say, "Look, I need to talk to you about something. Is now a good time?" Make sure you don't want to catch them where they're not prepared to listen. But I've got some feedback for you. And now I feel like I'm a manager at work. But hey, but you know what?
I hate this.
I say that as a joke, but I've seen a lot. This is one of my other ideas that somebody else could probably steal, but like correlating like real world management, business experience with TTRPGs and running games. Like I see a lot of correlations in the human behaviors of it and whatnot. But in any case, you know what? Talk to them, not necessarily, just about the situation and how it made you feel. And with no expectation that they do anything back for you. They might, but at least you expressed yourself openly and honestly, and it's for them to, your conscience is clear at that point.
It's like a safety tool. It's only as good as you use them, Noir.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you quoting me at me?
Yes. Is it working?
It's
If I listened to myself, I wouldn't be in half of the situations that I'm in.
Yeah. You're like me. You're great at giving advice. Terrible.
Yeah, I give great advice. I don't take any of it, but I give great advice. Physician, heal thyself. No. I don't have insurance.
I don't have insurance.
Okay,
that should be a sincere form of flattery if she's quoting you at yourself.
It's upsetting.
There you go.
No, but I will take that penance.
Yeah.
We've already started scheduling the conversation. I'm just not looking forward to it.
Yeah. And like I said, just keep it to the facts and with no expectation of it has to be resolved or repaired right then and there.
Like, when you do this,
you get
I
off your
feel
chest.
this. Just put your feelings out there.
Yeah.
All I feel is hate and rage.
And this is a good point though, because a lot of the, I pay attention to anytime I see safety tools brought up online, and the comments that evolve for and against, of course, and 90% of them are all about communicate, talk to your DM, talk to your players and all that. And that, that does work. That can work for groups that meet regularly and have a relationship beyond conventions, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's communication is key. But it has to be a safe space to do so. You got to be,
Exactly.
you have to know that your GM is open to it. And that's why I say, make sure they are ready to receive feedback versus just springing it on them. And if now's not a good time, just, hey, let me know when there's a good time. We can talk about it.
That is fair and good advice. Which I hate. Why did I make this segment?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Well, you brought it upon yourself. man.
I know I make terrible decisions
Because you want to make yourself a better person, kicking and screaming the entire way there.
Like, I want to be a better person, but I don't want to go through the process. I want to be at the end where I'm a better person. All this getting there shit, it
Oh.
sucks.
That's the problem
Yeah,
about
I
character
know.
development. It doesn't happen in a one-shot.
Nope. Yeah, exactly.
Damn, that's
Exactly.
a shirt right there. Um,
So I guess, yeah, I've stalled as long as I can.
Now
think
it's
of mine.
time for your confession.
I think my thing is that I'm a terrible player. I am not a good player in that and this is why I'm more or less a forever DM now, because I am a victim of short attention span. And if the game's not moving at a quick pace and I'm not pulled in I've realized this about myself, but I think back to when I didn't know this. I was just, I would check out so fast. And it was really hard. And that led me, to where I love DMing because I'm engaged all the time. It keeps me focused. It keeps me in the game at all times. Even when my players are interacting with each other, it allows me to observe and take notes and be like, all right, you're feeding the pump now with all your ideas that I can steal. You're writing the story for me. Thank you. But so it put me on that path of being a forever DM. And that's where I know I enjoy, it's a good balance. I enjoy it. And because of that, it keeps me engaged and it keeps me from being a bad player. But like I said, I know I'm a bad player in that sense. So I try to focus more in the few times that I do play. But again, going back to my player who's got the Marvel Universe, I want to be a player in that. I want to try out a different system altogether. And I want to be a good player. So what do I need to do, Noir, to be a good player?
All right, my penance for you, because I actually share this. I share this sin with you. When I feel myself zoning out, I make myself take one note about somebody else's character that's doing something completely mundane that I can bring up later in a conversation.
Okay.
So like, let's say that, the druid is just talking to an animal or something. I'll have my character bring that up later.
Okay.
And I'll try and color the scene like, hey, you were talking to that squirrel and all I heard was squeakity squeaky squeak. What do you still remember how to speak squirrel, or does that go away? Like just something like I would actually be curious about if I were in that magic world.
Right.
And I feel like when you do that, it kind of honors the other players at the table and it gives them a chance to like, well, I learned this spell on accident. I
Mhm.
don't recall how to speak squirrel, but when I'm speaking squirrel, it feels like I'm speaking common, or just something like that where we can have a conversation about another character.
I really like that. I think that's a penance I can live with. If that is in fact what you're assigned. You may assign something way off.
Oh no, that is the penance. It's just
that is it.
It's
And
just
I
take
actually
note
agree
of
with that.
something mundane about another player.
Yeah,
like
I was gonna
zone
say
in on a detail. Yeah.
I was gonna say
Go ahead.
channel that distraction into note taking, into keeping tabs on everything. I'm in agreement with Noir on
Hey,
that
we're
one.
the same
Okay.
page. Look at that. Locked in.
I will graciously accept that penance. And when I play whatever superhero I play in Marvel, I will make notes to particular note, literally, of details. I think that's a great idea.
Heck
It's
yeah.
I found really good players obviously help build the story. They're engaged, and I want to be a good player in the times that I am. I'm blessed with some great players that I have now, as well as ones I've had previously in California when I was living there. I missed those gaming groups. Really good at helping build story. I want to live up to their example and to what yours, as you've given me this penance. So I will definitely. I'll let you know how it goes.
I can't wait to hear it. Also, like you keep talking about all the places that you've lived, and I'm like, man, I've only ever lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's so
That's
neat.
okay.
No, I'm just like that's so I can't imagine having traveled nearly as much.
Yeah, I told you I have a short attention span. It's like, all right, let's go somewhere else. Let's go
New
to
city
California.
time.
I lived in France for 3 years too. But
Holy shit.
yeah, I've been around. Like I said, I gauge my life, my time frame. I'm like, where was I living at the time? So I must have been 14 because that was before Atlanta, or a type of thing.
That's
Exactly. I was New York, so I was I was 14 or 13.
For me, it's just different places in Illinois. Like I was in Schaumburg here, I was in Bolingbrook there. Anita, don't think you're getting away. What is your sin?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I actually have one this week. I push other players to make bad choices, and then they have to live with the consequences of me pushing them to make a bad choice. So it's all my fault, and I feel guilty about it.
I don't know that that's exactly a sin, but I support that. But
Peer pressure.
Okay.
The specific circumstances, we were playing Capers Cyberpunk last night, and it's a push your luck system. So a player drew a card that was like, okay, like it probably would have passed, but it was clubs, so there was a complication with it. And I'm like, you should draw that again. Like, just, spend the moxie, draw it again, push your luck. And they botched their next draw.
Oh, no.
So it was even worse. And then they had consequences. And I'm like, I feel bad now.
Oh, you do this as the GM.
Oh no, I did this as a fellow player.
Okay, I was about to be like, you fucking monster.
But I also did this as a GM during our one shot.
I mean, you had a group of players that were begging to make bad decisions, though. So,
I mean, to be fair.
Yeah, this is where story outweighs mechanics, right?
Yeah.
It's so much more fun.
All right.
Sorry, I have a cat by my feet who keeps dropping off toys. He's trying to tell me something.
He's not being very subtle. My penance for you is to jump in front of the bad consequence that you encouraged.
Okay.
You gotta lay on that grenade, Captain America style.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right.
Yeah, surprise them by taking the fall for them. Yeah.
In that
game, there's actually a mechanic for that.
Oh, good.
Oh, well, there you go. Shout out to Nerdburger Games for Caper Cyberpunk. Really fun game. Uses a card deck system instead of rolling dice. Clubs are depending on what you pull. Success with the complication. Spades are a success with a boon, and the other two suits are just whatever you pull. It's a success or a failure. Really fun system. It kind of feels a little like you're playing poker while you're playing a TTRPG. It's really fun.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we got our sins out. I think we're feeling good. We're feeling refreshed. A little lighter,
Good to get that out.
Go for it. Sin no more.
Yeah.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, that you don't feel that you're a attentive player. I'm not going to say bad player, because I think that there is such a thing as a bad player, but I don't think that that's a bad player specifically. I think that's an inattentive player.
Mm-hmm.
What would you mentioned that you feel that you're more attentive as a GM. What would you feel that your GM signature move is?
That's tough because I got players watching who may disagree, but and actually I don't I employ this more with one shots and players I don't know, because usually with a home game we've got ongoing story and you can't change things on the fly. But something I like to do, which I feel is effective, and it may strictly be its effect on me, not so much the players, is at the start of a one shot in particular, or if it doesn't matter, if it's not going to impact the session, I like to just pick a player and say, hey, roll a d6. Start out with a random die roll, And in my head, I'm very quickly like setting the weather. Like 1 is perfect day, 6 is it's raining and storming and lightning out, and then a sliding scale. I haven't even like set that scale. It changes every time. When I because I haven't like formalized this. But and then so they'll be like it's a 5, and like all right, it's raining really hard out, not thunder and lightning, but said this is the weather right now. And then another player, I may be like roll a d12. And based on whatever the story is intended to be, I'll kind of set my starting time and be like, okay, it's my start number is 1 a.m. And then whatever they roll on that 12, I add, or on the die, I add to 1. And like, okay, if they roll a 5, it's 6 a.m. and you guys have just been stirred awake and awoke by X. So my point is, where I think that improves the game is you immediately start by showing the players your die rolls are impacting the story. Like this is not scripted. You roll and now this is the time of day and now this is the weather. And it forces me as a GM to be like, okay, it's raining cats and dogs outside. How do I build that into the story and make that matter? And then, okay, it's 6 a.m. versus 5 p.m. So this is what's happening in the day. Like you're up with the staff at the tavern trying to get at the inn who's just getting breakfast ready versus, the minstrels at full swing at 6 or 7 p.m. So it helps me challenge myself in creativity. But my feeling is that it helps the players establish right off the bat, you guys are affecting the story. You're building the story, not me. And again, I've never actually asked people if they feel that way as a result. So either it may also just motivate me to be more like that as a DM, like just keep pulling story out of them as a result, which I hope makes me a better DM as a result. But I think that's something I do that I haven't seen anywhere else in any other games I've participated in.
I like that. It facilitates player buy-in.
Right. It really, you hear about player agency all the time, and like the worst type of game is where they don't have, where agency is taken away. And I think that it's kind of goes completely the other way in saying, even you guys are impacting, the weather, the time. Hey, roll a D5, or a D5. Which
they
I heard exists
they're
somewhere.
Disgusting.
Like roll a D10. Oh, there are, they get a 6. There are 6 cats wandering around the tables of the tavern, and just to get them rolling. And also it helps because they're rolling dice right away. Which, let's face it, people love rolling. As long as they don't have them in their mouth, they love rolling dice.
Thank you. Stop the crunch.
Yeah, I like to do that and get things really going fast with the players, rolling dice quickly and building the story out of what the dice rolls are.
I think one of your players is in chat. Eradicate says that your other signature move is killing the paladin, which is also Noir's signature move.
Yeah, he kills himself, I'm gonna say. And then again, the dice.
How many times? How many times did you kill Yenna?
It's been at least twice. Yes.
Yenna,
I can think of 2 distinctly right now, but
Yenna didn't die as much as she was on the threshold of life and death.
Yeah, exactly. It's your choices, and then the dice ultimately decide. They put the period on or the exclamation point on the end of the sentence of your choices. So,
no, I like that. Respect to you. We don't kill players. Players kill themselves.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, was there any inciting incident where you were just like, I want to build a quicker safety tool? Was there any direct incident that you can attribute to the creation of the deck of player safety?
I kind of alluded to this earlier, as far as after somebody hit the X card, me kind of rewinding the situation and seeing a little bit of build. Like's not necessarily the right word, but I tend to get somewhat descriptive in flesh wounds, breakages, damage to bodies and or gore. I can be a little gory in my descriptions, sometimes more than others. It just depends on my mood. But I think what really set this into motion was I was playing at a game store with strangers I did not know. And I had the X card out, and there was a scenario of just festering, gangrenous, stinking, open wounds on these bodies. And I just kept going with the description because I was getting into it and I was really trying to paint a picture. And then one of the players X-carded and just clued me into that. Because, even though the X card is a good fail-safe of a tool, I also find that it's probably, and I'm just throwing a number out there because we can't know, but it's probably you actually implemented 1 out of 50 times that it should be, right?
Yeah.
Like people, the having the ability or the willingness to reach out and say, oh, I'm uncomfortable, I want to move on from this. There's so much that happens where people probably should, but they don't because of all the reasons we talked about. But so that one in particular made me think, okay, I could, if I knew in advance that this person didn't like realistic, gory descriptions, I could clearly leave them out and it doesn't hurt my game at all. I could veil that very easily. They'll know there are decaying bodies there and we move on and everybody else can imagine whatever they imagine decaying bodies to be, without me conveying what I wanted, what my vision of it. So that was the one instance where I thought there's got to be something better. And like I said, it was kind of a light bulb moment. Like, I think I can just do this, with a deck, with just simply with cards to head it off, like gory stuff. You want it in the game or not? And then it just kind of evolved from there into play testing with just card stock. I printed my own cards and my players were so gracious to humor me over and over again and give their feedback. I couldn't have done this without their feedback for sure. And then when I went to game stores and started play testing it there, even I can remember specifically a game where it had all anything goes cards and this real big guy, it looked like a linebacker, who was there playing. And he just looked at me and said, it was all anything goes, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And his sincerity in that was like the green light that said, okay, I have to make this happen. This is something that I need to do. And then that same response happened time and time again of, thanks for taking the time to do this beforehand. And then I was like, all right, I'm on to something. I need to graduate to real cards. Because card stock, it just doesn't, like, the great thing about poker cards, one, everybody's familiar with poker cards and knows how to skim a deck real quickly. And that texture on them is just right there's a reason they use that texture. It's easy to manipulate and scan the cards. Whereas when printing on card stock, they stick together. It's hard to do. Even the ones blank ones you can buy from Amazon, those don't have the right texture or coating to them. So casino decks are really the way to go for something like this, where you want to be fast and skim it real quickly. But
absolutely,
those two experiences were really what were like, I got to make this into something.
Do you ever see a point coming where someone might be able to order a custom deck? I know there are some games that have their own custom logos. I'm putting together a game of my own, and I was just like, man, having the logo of the game on the back would be kind of sick. Do you ever see like this expanding to that point?
I do. I initially had the idea of different genres like sci-fi and other things like that. But I also was like, I need to stay in my lane for right now because I'm just fantasy. I don't know those genres well enough. I haven't played them to say I know how to do it without having to like consult people and all that. At Gen Con, there were, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. There was a game producer there who specialized more in sci-fi. And they were like, we would like to work on sci-fi specific decks. Like, so the idea of having different decks for different genres is there. I could see it evolving in that capacity. Because sometimes, like pregnancy actually was one, or pregnancy related topics. Like in fantasy, I'm not thinking much about that. But when it comes to Alien, well, this actually can happen a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it may be applicable, and other topics might be applicable in like Alien type game versus a fantasy type game.
Yeah.
So I could see different genres, and then at the end, different logos for sure. It could absolutely happen. When it comes to production and the cost of producing, quantity is king, of course. So, it's exponential. It is not linear. Like my Kickstarter decks cost me a fortune, but I was like, I'm doing this no matter what. I don't care if I'm losing money. I just want to get this out there. But to only do 250 decks in a Kickstarter versus running 10,000 copies, your prices are so significantly different. So it can obviously happen at a certain price point. And to get that to make that happen. But again, to me, it's a passion project. I'll work towards accommodating anything if it gets it out there.
To me, this feels like a product that it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before this gets in front of the right people and it blows up. And I just honestly, I am waiting for that, because again, I have fallen in love with this. This in a very local area of Chicago, this has become like my signature thing. So it's just awesome. I am waiting for this to go boom. We were just talking about Capers, which is a card-based system. So I know for sure I want to introduce this to Craig over at Nerdburger Games. We already used a card deck to determine roles. So like just having a second card deck to ensure safety would be sweet. So I just I'm sorry, I just saw a chat change face huggers to face palmers.
Change.
Just an alien that makes you palm your own face. Then you become an alien. No, I like it. No, it just this really does just make GMing so much easier. Because as you said with your inciting incident, when players play an X card, I think the difference between a good GM and a great GM is the self-reflection. And I know that whenever somebody's pulled an X card in my game, like I really do kind of sit with that and go, there were so many points where I could have avoided this.
Yeah. And
this really kind of soothes that in the sense that, like, okay, there's a point where we could all kind of see it coming, and we all missed it a little bit. So it's a blanket for me as a GM going, all right, I did what I could. Keep that note in mind for next game, and kind of verbally warn people next time, even if they don't pull the card. So, because now I'm cognizant of this is something that could have been missed.
Right.
And we can, when I'm playing the game, it costs you nothing to go, just so you all know, this and this are about to happen.
Right.
Now's the time to, like, the deck is still here. If we're not comfortable with it, even when I'm saying this, I'm looking how it's being received. And if somebody even flinches at me going, this and this comes next, then I'm going to water it down.
Right.
So yeah, I love this so freaking much. Right. I know I've just spent most of this episode gushing. I apologize. It's really just an amazing tool.
I think it's so much. I think it almost the metaphor that's sort of coming to mind for this is it's or I guess simile, because I'm going to use the word like. It's almost like a road map when you're on a road trip with friends. Is exactly the direction that you're going, the rate of speed that you're going, and the places that your players, where your players don't want to go. And it just helps you avoid those, but you still have your exit ramps just in case you need to get off of the highway. But yeah.
Right, that's a good analogy. Yes, I think so. It's like it does lay it down beforehand. You know where you're headed.
So we heard you got appreciation from this big Linebreaker guy, and that's when you knew, like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. Has there been any encounters or any experiences that you've had with this deck that kind of caught you off guard, where you saw it being more effective than you originally intended, or just any aspect of it that you didn't expect?
Yes, in a couple of different answers, and it's not exactly in line with, I think, your question, but two things that I didn't expect that occurred was one of my Kickstarter, the response from my Kickstarter backers, several of them either messaging me back saying how they're so appreciative of it, but literally receiving a handwritten thank you note from one of them. Wow. Who mailed it to me after receiving it, just, really like, this is the tool they needed, and they really appreciate it. That really caught me off guard, that it could have that big of an impact, that people would take the time to do that. Another surprising thing, again, it's not exactly, I think, in line with your question, but walking around Gen Con, somebody stopping me because I was, I wore my DECA player safety shirt because you got to always be branding and getting the name out there. I do have 4 different ones, one for each day. I'm not wearing the same one every day, even though they look alike. But somebody literally stopping me and being like, hey, where'd you get that shirt? And then turns out they were a Kickstarter backer. And, it goes into how they've been using it and how they really have enjoyed the impact on their game. So those were surprising moments because of this, where they caught me off guard for sure. I think more in line with your question, that same person was explaining to me how, and you touched on this a little bit, how they, using the deck in ways I didn't imagine. And in the same, still using it as a safety tool, but his technique was paring it down to content specific to his session. So he didn't use all 30 cards. And I don't think either way is wrong. I never imagined it that way. I thought, okay, all 30 cards, keep them out there. Because one thing to know as a GM, if you're using the full deck, 7 times out of 10, the cards drawn and turn in don't even impact your game. They may pull out snakes and it's like, well, I have no snakes in this session anyway, so I don't have to change anything. So it's only the fringe times where you actually need to adjust your game and be like, okay, let me take a second to modify a quick thing and then move on and move into the game. But he was paring it down to like, these are the 15 things I know are going to be in my game, so let me leave it to that, versus taking things that weren't going to be impacted. So that surprised me in that something as simple as this deck of hot button topics could still be thought of differently. And that's why when people are using it, especially early on in this stage, I'm like, I want the feedback. I want to know what's working for you. If something didn't work, how could I improve it? You're this second person recently who's mentioned more blank cards, to the point maybe fewer anything goes cards and more blank ones, to where you could hand a blank one to everybody just in case they do want to write something down. I know that jeopardizes anonymity in it, and I really wanted to focus on the anonymity in the first go through. I didn't want people to be writing things down, hoping that we cover it all. But more options is better than less, right? So as long as it's not burdensome, it doesn't increase burden on anybody. I think that might be a change that does come eventually, is having just enough anything goes cards to cover, let's say, 8 players in a worst case scenario. Hopefully you're not running more than 8, because you're just creating a world of hurt for yourself. I know I've got an old friend from California, Rodney, who will run for 13 people and do it successfully, but he's a great GM and can do that.
I mean, at
because
that
he
point,
doesn't
just
want
buy
to say
multiple
no.
decks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, buy multiple decks. There you go. But in any case, so that could be something. I think there's, the feedback and hearing from how people are using it. It does surprise me sometimes. Oh, I didn't think of how the deck could be used in that way. But hopefully that last part more directly answers what you intended with the question.
Oh, all of those answers did.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just love whenever somebody creates something and puts it out into the world, and then they just have to watch what the world does with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's a certain point it's no longer in your control, and you have to see how people apply it, and hopefully it's in line with your expectations, but you have to also be open to new ways of using it. And again, this is one of those career things in my career, and in launching this, being willing to ask. You have a great idea, whether it's at work or in the gaming space, whatever. You think you have a great idea because, of course, it's yours, right? It's great. Asking people to tell you everything that's wrong with it and tell me all the reasons this is going to fail it's a humbling experience, because, of course, you want validation of how great it is, but being willing to hear all the problems that you're creating with this, or all the reasons it's a bad idea, allows you then to look at each of those and address those, to be like, all right, I have a contingency plan for this, or I know how to fix that. And at least I'm doing it now before I launch, as opposed to after it's out there and I didn't know that problem was going to be there. So, soliciting feedback and really soliciting all the negative feedback you can in a safe environment when you're ready to hear that stuff, allows you to tweak and improve earlier rather than later.
Yeah.
So
I can't wait to get my hands on the digital version. This is going to be the standard of safety tools that I use in all my games.
Yeah,
I
that's great to hear.
I just that we use safety tools on everything that we do here on Critical Misses, of course. I've developed a couple of my own safety tools. Those are more in line with like when the game is going. This is the perfect before game setup. So I think I just I cannot stress enough how having the foundation makes GMing easier, because there's those questions that you have when you're like, okay, I've got this villain and I want to show that they're heinous. How like where can I go with this? Like I always tell people that permissions that safety tools aren't permissions aren't safety belts. They're permission slips. They give you permission to wild out, to just go nuts,
right?
And like having that foundation and knowing that there is an active secondary safety tool as well, where it's just like, okay, I missed this card, so or I didn't pull the player versus player card, but this person is trying to hit me, so we have a safety tool for that. I just think it partners so well with whatever safety tool that you're already using. Like this is a great addition to whatever you're already doing with your games. Like I have used a lot of different safety tools, and one doesn't omit the other. And in fact, this marries with every safety tool that I already use in such an amazing way. This is the before game safety tool. The X and O system for me is a great during the game, and then Stars and Wishes is perfect for after the game. So there's literally no part of us being at the table where we don't have the means to modify the game to everyone's comfort level. And I cannot stress enough how fucking amazing that is.
Well, I think if it takes off as you say, I'm gonna have you and Anita to help to thank for a lot of this. I can't thank you enough for having me on to talk about it.
No, as soon as I saw this, I was just like, well, you're on Morning Ritual. Like I don't know if I said that to you, but like as soon as I was looking through the cards, I was like, oh, we're gonna have a conversation about this.
Yeah. I really at Gen Con, the panel was about safety tools and how they help, not hinder. That was kind of the title of it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who was hosting it or who was on the panel itself. I really wished I could talk to you guys beforehand, because I could barely sit in my seat. I sat right up front so you could see the shirt.
And I was locked on. It's like I almost want to apologize, because I was just like, I saw the shirt and I was just like, that's somebody that I'm gonna make sure that I talk to.
Yeah. I had to refrain from being like, let me turn this into a sales pitch for the audience, because clearly the audience is there for the right, they're all vested in it as well. But I'm so glad I got to talk to you afterwards.
I also wish that I talked to you beforehand, because there are a lot of questions that we got from folks that this is the answer. Like, again, you stressed on this point a lot, and it's one of the main things that when we're on those panels we talk about, which is like people. TTRPGs are a social thing, and nobody wants to be the one that poops the party. And sometimes, at a table of 6 people, like even if one person is just like, I don't like this very gory description, it's gotta stop. And it's hard to be that person that's just like, I need this to stop. And this nips that in the bud before it ever gets to that point. It's so good. I mean, and it's also good in the sense that if you pull a card and your GM does it anyway, that is a immediate red flag for a player.
Right.
Like, I like to talk about how safety tools work just by being safety tools. And that goes both ways. If your
Mhm.
GM isn't honoring the cards you pulled, that's not a table for you. And you wouldn't know that unless you pulled the card.
Right.
So yes,
I will
it's
say
very
also
effective.
it again in reviewing the cards that are pulled with all the players before you start, so everybody's on the same page. There
Oh,
are times, and
absolutely.
I've had this
Mhm.
where accidentally I forget a topic that was pulled, because maybe I lean into gory descriptions naturally. So I forgot to pull back, and it allows the players also to say, "Hey, don't forget." So sometimes it could be a GM who ignores it, and that's just clearly a big red flag. But it can also be an honest mistake where the table as a group can help steer the conversation. Be like, don't forget that's we pulled that card. Like, oh yeah, let me tone that down. Sorry guys.
Yeah.
So
Having the review and then having them in a place where people can see them and access them as that visual reminder is also important, because I know that several times, like if I've been in a game and I'm like, I want to do this description. Wait a sec. Let me look at my safety tools and make sure that
yeah,
I can first before I push that envelope.
right. Yeah,
And I
that's one thing I haven't figured the solution for that yet, as far as how to include it within the deck, like a way to keep them visible. Without it being like an extra accessory, but maybe it just has to be
I
something
mean, the only
outside
thing
the
that I can
clips
think
and
of is
screen.
maybe if you did the text on the top and then on the bottom reversed, like an actual playing card.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you can lay them out on the table and your players will be able to
True.
read them and you'll be able to read them.
True. Okay, that's a good idea.
so what I've been doing, and I talked to you earlier about this, is this is my dungeon, this is my GM screen, and
Right.
there's a slot on the top just for initiative. And what I've been doing is I have them up here,
Yeah.
so like my players can see them. And if I need to, I could just what was it? Oh right, I can't do that. So
Yeah.
I honestly, I have been considering getting a second deck just so I can have one showing on the front
Both
and one
sides.
showing myself. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just a convenience thing. Honestly, it works with just the one deck. You just have to flip it around. And
Yeah.
I do have to say, the one time that I did have to review and look over, it added a level of terror to my players that was just delicious.
Yeah. Can I go there? Can I?
Right?
Yeah. Get
They walk
ready.
into a room and I'm like, okay, hold on, before I describe it, and I'm looking at the cards and I just hear a couple of people go, oh no, like, oh yeah, like we gotta see how bad it can get. And like, one of the reasons that I love tabletop so much is like moments like that where it's not anything that's in the game, it's of the game, and it
Right.
adds to the game. uh I love sustaining myself on the fear of my players. And that's just one more aspect of it where it's just like, I can't do that to you. And my players are thinking, if he can't do that, what's he gonna do instead? And
Yeah. I
it's just
know.
like, yeah.
What do you
What
have in
can
store
they
for us?
do?
Yeah.
They can do anything.
And that's the beauty of safety tools, which is like, it if you're watching somebody actively pondering what terrible things they can do to you, that's
Yeah.
that's horrifying.
How do I torture them in a safe way?
Right? It's just like, what are the parameters for things that I could do to just mess your hero up? So like, it's just an added level of spice. It's just a new flavor to the game that I promise you, once you have that experience the first time, you'll understand why I'm geeking out so hard, because it's so good in protecting people and also scaring the shit out of them. And if that's not what GMing is for, then I need to get out this game, baby.
I know.
All right, so we've got 2 segments left.
All right.
We've got three.
Three, actually.
Oh.
Okay, go for it.
The first one that we have is Petty Prime Time.
You're gonna have to
Okay.
explain that one.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that you want to rant or subtweet about, if there's just anything happening in the space that you're just like, this is where you can get it out. And of course, I would never ask a guest to do something that I myself not willing to do. But you know what? I think Anita's gonna start us off on this one.
Absolutely. Ooh, okay. So my petty prime time is we have several different platforms for people to go on now. Like there's the energy that we had on Twitter was fine for Twitter. Like always having a villain of the day that you could bash on, like that was Twitter's thing. Let's not bring that energy to the new social media platforms. Let's stop giving shitty people more attention than they need.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
That's my petty prime time this week.
Jeez, I don't know if I can top that one. All right, here's my petty prime time.
All right.
My petty prime time is if you don't like a game system, don't play it.
Right.
You don't have to yuck other people's yum. If somebody is truly excited about D&D 5th edition, let them be. If you're a Pathfinder kid, just play your Pathfinder, and vice versa. Yes, D&D holds the lion's share of people's attention, but if you're spending your time complaining about the lion's share of attention that D&D has, congratulations, you're adding to the attention that D&D has. Just
for sure.
Enjoy the things you enjoy, and shut the fuck up. Like that's...
Can I add on to that a little bit?
Yes, sure. Please do.
I'm gonna say that the Pathfinder D&D beef, it feels very Xbox versus PlayStation, and that wasn't cool in the early 2000s.
No.
Oh no.
And they've both been able to carve out their area of success.
Yeah, like just be happy that people are happy.
Just play what you want to play. Yeah, their joy does not subtract from your joy.
Oh my god, that's so true. Pathfinder versus D&D is the console war for
first. It's Coke versus Pepsi. It's just rehashing the same old hat shit.
Yeah.
Get a new thing.
Oh
yeah. Do what brings you joy and shut the fuck up, like you said.
Oh my god, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's petty prime time. If you have anything you want to get off your chest.
Well, that was going to be, I actually had a few that came to mind. That was one, I touched on that. Like, look, negativity, it only hurts. It doesn't help. Like, it doesn't help you being negative about somebody else's project, especially when their success doesn't hurt you. Right. So you guys have touched on that enough. The other one actually is kind of a WotC thing. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Brain, Dungeons and Dragons, whatnot. But WotC lately has been doing these surprise releases. Things they haven't been talking about, like this. They just came out with a new or their own virtual tabletop, not the one we've been talking about, the 3D one they announced, not just a 2D. It's on D&D Beyond now, and boom, here's our beta for a grid map system for 2D play. And I had not heard anything about this. I know the news I listened to on the D&D news I listened to had, they were all surprised by it. It's like, oh, there's just something new, just like that. And usually it's this, they used to release stuff a lot slower, fewer books every year, and there was always a buildup. Like, I can't wait for that to come out.
Like, here's the teaser, it's coming out
soon,
exactly, right?
And all of a sudden, boom, here's your tabletop. Try it out, see what you think. It's like, well, I did not know that, and it'd be just nice to know. And they had another book on dragons. It wasn't the Fizzbands dragon book, which had build up and was an official release. They just had some other, like, not everything about dragons, kind of everything about dragons book that was a Wizards official product that I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? So it's I don't like the surprise side of it. It's from a big company like that, I think that, and it does, I guess, to me, it seems like it's a tactic right now. Like, they are trying to pop in what they see as positive things into the space as a different type of tactic. It's up to them to just find out. The numbers will show if it's working for them or not. But I'd rather be like, let me know what's coming so I can plan. I'm a DM. So, and that in particular matters to me because I have copious televisions now. Every TV that I somehow retire, I'm like, oh, that's a gaming TV now. So it's on the table. I use a digital, a TV for digital maps when I play in person. So digital mapping systems matter to me and what to use. And I've used Fantasy Grounds forever just because I got so invested in it that, I wasn't going to diversify. But it's a very heavy system because you have to install it on your system to run. So it slows everything down. And all of a sudden, boom, there's another solution that really costs me nothing now. They'll monetize to whatever degree they need to, but that's what a business does. I get it. Keep putting out good content and good product and I'll pay you for it. That's kind of the nature of it. I can't expect that for free. But at the same time, it allows you, the beta even allows you to import your own maps. And there are thousands of free maps out there that you can import for free and use without having to buy map packs and things like that. So, but anyway, yeah, stop hitting me with the out of the blue surprises on what could be a good product, and a good supplement to what you're doing.
In addition to what you're talking about, one of the things that WotC has been launching very quietly are adventures specifically meant for kids to be like the gateway drugs into
TTRPG. Absolutely, get them hooked.
And that's what they're advertised as. That's what they say on all the stuff. Like, this is adventures for kids, and I'm watching grown-ass men critique it like this adventure sucks. Like, this is horrible. What is this? Made for children? Yes.
You're not 12 years old. You won't get it.
This isn't for you. Just because it's Dungeons and Dragons doesn't mean that you're the target audience.
Absolutely.
Chill. So no, I feel that absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a good through line in all of our petty prime times here. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Positivity. That's what the world needs more of.
Yes. Like,
doesn't hurt.
Listen, the world is on fire. We don't need any more gasoline. Relax.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in our fantasy games or
Right?
fantasy, where no matter what the genre, it's like we do this to escape the world burning, right? And create our own in a fantasy controlled setting, right?
God, I've watched the YouTuber do a no lie 17-minute review complaining about this adventure for kids.
Oh God.
I was like, and
it's
I watched
not
all 17 minutes.
You.
I watched all 17 minutes. And, because as every minute passed, I was like, this isn't serious. Like, at some point, the punchline's coming, and it never did.
Nope.
It was full serious.
Dead serious. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
That brings us to our last two segments, and one is extraordinarily positive, so we save that for the last side.
Okay.
The first one is it potentially could be the deepest pits of despair. So here we go.
Okay.
If you've been in the TTRPG space long enough, you've probably had the displeasure of playing with a that guy. A that guy is a veritable black hole of fun at the table. Somebody that if they were yeeted into the sun, your experience would improve tenfold. Now, I should preface this by saying we have had that guys as light as railroading GMs and as brutal as a player who offered to help a newbie create a new character, bit them on the neck, gaslit them about it, and then the character that they helped this newbie put together was put together wrong. So,
Oh geez.
we call them the biter gaslighter.
Okay. That's a t-shirt.
So I have to ask you, Tom, do you have a bad guy story for us?
I do, and this sounds terrible. It's a dad. It's a dad at the game table with its two young kids, two kids too young to be playing is what it is. And this is where I realized my time was precious at a convention. This is where I was like, you know what? I'm going to get up and go do something else now. And it was a dad with his two kids that were, I'm guessing like 9 and 11. And where the problem arose is they went into family mode. So you've got 6 players total. I'm one of 6. 3 of them are this family, and they went into family mode and their dynamic started taking over.
Oh,
You know,
God.
kids acting up. The kids weren't ready for a sit down TTRPG. As the dad was wanting, kind of forcing them to do it. And then he starts having to be dad. And this, it's just like, oh, this is not what I sat down for. So I think, it wasn't it wasn't anything to do about play style or it was just the wrong age at the wrong time and subjecting the rest of us to their family dynamic.
Yeah.
And some people, you didn't feel like you had a choice. It's like, oh, I got to ride this out. But that was the moment where I thought, I'm going to politely excuse myself from this game and go do something else because I am not having fun. So yeah, don't, play because your kids are dying to play and they want to play with you at the table. And, when you do have young kids as a GM, also, if you're that dad, go for the 2-hour intro to D&D. Don't sit down for a 4-hour session, please.
Yeah.
Because a 2-hour, I at Gen Con, I DM'd the intro to D&D, 2-hour session, young kids with their parents. It was great. They,
it's
the
long
parents,
enough that like it's a good time for a session, and it's still short enough that like a kid can have their attention span fulfilled.
Right. And it kind of taught me also, in my experience as a player at conventions, the ideal table to me is everybody's a stranger, or maybe at most 2 people know each other. Because I know if like my friends and I if our normal D&D groups were to go to a convention and that one stranger is trapped with us, we couldn't help but go into our normal dynamic. And now they're a guest at our table. And that to me is not as much fun as we may think we're having. That one person probably is not enjoying our version of camaraderie. So yeah, to me, the ideal table is it's almost all strangers because people are generally on better behavior when they're around strangers, generally. Or maybe, 1 or 2 know each other.
I had one game at a convention, or at Gen Con specifically, where it was an entire table of people that knew each other except for one person.
Yeah.
I had 4 people that were all really good friends and one really quiet player who did not know anybody. And I'm like,
oh, that poor soul.
honey, I'm so sorry. But they actually wound up having a really good time. And they had probably one of those beautiful moments in the session that I had.
That's good. That's good.
Like
At
I
least,
managed to draw out a nice moment out of the quiet player at the table.
Right. Yeah. And as a GM, you got to pick up on that, right? If you're in tune with your players, spotlighting that this is the outsider, let's make sure that they still feel welcomed at the table, and make sure that everybody has a good time and is spotlighted.
I gotta tell you, this story reminds me of an experience I had at Gen Con, which it's very this is that same table where we had the father and his 2 kids, and the little girl asked, "What's cannibalism?" I have to say, man, that is an awkward experience because as the GM, you are the leader of the table, and as the parent, they are the leader of the family. And there are a couple of times where the little girl want to do something that was viable, but the dad would be like, no, that's not the right move. And it's such an awkward moment where as a GM, you're like, listen, I get your pops here, but we're going to listen to the kid here. Like it's kind of my job to manifest her imagination.
Right.
I can't have you stifling that. You gotta let the reins go a bit. And that's so awkward. It's like, quit being dad right now.
I know.
You're Olgar the Barbarian.
Olgar doesn't boss me around.
I would love to hear a kid say that to their parents. Like the kid stays in character and they're like,
"You're not my dad, Olgar."
Yes, you're breaking. No breaking character, Dad.
Quit metagaming, father.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, I will note the deck does say, or at least the more recent production run does say 13 and older. I have come to realize, like, if it's young kids at the table, I don't use I just say, look guys, we're gonna run a PG or a G-rated game because of the children here at the table, and just move on from that. Otherwise, what I found
is probably a smarter way to go about it.
Yeah. Otherwise, I found the parent is pulling out like 20 of the 30 cards, being like, "I don't want my kids exposed." Oh, like, oh yeah. I didn't see that. Let's just keep this G-rated. Everybody can adapt.
That would be a really cool addition to the cards. Would just be like a general campaign rating card.
Yeah.
So everybody could put what they want the game to be rated.
They could. I think you'd obviously have to plan for the lowest card, whatever the lowest denominator is.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think conventions do a good job for the most part of specifying either, hey, we want PG-13 is a minimum. Some of the like Lurking Fears, I talked to the organizer for that. They'll run 18 and over, but it's very, hey, it's 18 plus, but he still wants the deck of cards because he knows even though we're running an 18 and over game, they still have feelings. There still can be issues. It doesn't mean they're okay with anything happening in that game world. He was actually one of the people that at Gen Con caught him right before the lad left on Sunday. And I wish I had a chance to speak to him sooner because he was like, no, because of what I run, I need quality control and I want it up front, not afterwards. Because the after game survey, most of the bigger companies run an after game survey, but again, it's already happened. The bad feelings are already there. And
now you've had time to stew in them too.
Yes, exactly. And it does put an onus on that organizer to act because any type of post survey, any survey you put out there, the expectation is you're going to act on the results, right? So, you're again, head it off before it happens. Don't wait till after the game to then try and deal with it, or during the game. So, just come on, Dad. You're not my dad right now. But just be your barbarian self.
Oh, I love that so much. I wish all GMs had convention playing experience because man, some of the things you go through, it's wild.
Yeah.
I had a bickering couple once. That was
oh man. Yeah.
Oh, the passive aggressiveness between that druid and that rogue, I will remember for the rest of my days.
Holy cow. I haven't come across that. I've fortunately had very good couples who play nice together, but you never know what happened before. Yeah.
It's just the short version of the story was they were bickering before we started playing, while we were playing, and then they encountered a bunch of wolves. The druid was animal handling one, and I said it might. This will probably be a couple of turns because first turn you're talking to the leader of the pack, trying to get them to calm down, and then the next turn you're doing the same for the rest of the pack. And she rolled a nat 20 on the leader of the pack, so the leader of the pack was assisting her in calming down the rest of the wolves, and then the rogue sneak attacked the leader of the pack, and from that point on, the game was done.
Oh god!
It was just, oh god!
Yeah. That wasn't a sneak attack on the wolf. That was a sneak attack on the druid.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Like the whole table went, oh fuck. Oh my god.
Oh, so when you start looking away, like, what else can I be doing right now?
Like, how do I quickly get them to the BBEG so we can end this?
Yeah, focus that energy somewhere else. Give them something to.
Easy. If you want them to quickly get to the BBEG, the polymorph drops on the wolf.
Listen, when you're panicking,
that's true. That's fair.
When you're panicking because you're like, "Oh God, I know what this is gonna do." You're not really thinking that straight.
Yeah.
But
this is not counseling. We,
right?
We are. Even though we got safety tools, we're practicing empathy, all that stuff. This is not a counseling session. I don't want to help anybody work through anything. I am not qualified. Just look at the mess around me. That's you can't see it right now.
This is not couples therapy.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I hid so deep in my GM screen. Like I'm just looking for the rules, and I'm just like, what am I gonna do? That brings us to my favorite part of the show, and what I'm calling our bastion of positivity. This is the community spotlight. If there are people that you feel have helped you in this space, some people that you feel don't get enough attention, or folks that you think we should reach out to, this is where you shout them out. generally what we like to do is we like to find anything that they're involved in, take little clips and send people their way to try and give them a little bit more love.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I feel like I'm the little guy, so there aren't much people littler than me to try and boost up, but there's no doubt that, like, I've seen that the progression of getting the word of the DECA player safety out there, and how, the domino effect of people talking about it. And this, being here with you guys, thank you so much for inviting me on, because it's another
thank you for being
case
here.
of being part of those dominoes, hopefully, and a big one at that. But I think back to, so I've listened to the Mastering Dungeons podcast for quite a while. I support, so that's Sean Merwin and Teos Abadia, who also goes by AlphaStream. And, like me, Sean, I think, is full-time as a game designer, but Teos, I think, has got a day job, and does this part-time. But in any case, I always liked their podcast because they would touch on the business side of things. And again, being in sales and corporate America, it's like talking about the business side of the industry is interesting to me. So I like that aspect of it. But then they dive into, a myriad of topics. They cover news, and then they'll cover, like, hey, right now they're working their way through the Dungeon Master's Guide, just chapter by chapter, talking about what they like, what they don't like from a design perspective. So it's just the insight they provide. So that being said, I got the opportunity to meet them at GameholeCon last year at one of their live broadcasts. And Teos was really the first catalyst. I said, hey, Teos, he also has his own, I'm forgetting the name of it, but TTR, make basically a business of TTRPGs, where he talks about, the word count and how much you got to write at this price point. He'll get into the business side of being in the TTRPG space. And that I sent him a message once just saying, hey, your videos might encourage me to dip my toe in the water. And he's like, dip away. Like, if you got something, go with it and just see what happens. And I didn't at the time. This was well before the deck. But when the idea hit me and I was going to do the Kickstarter, I reached out to him first and just let him know, like, hey, you've had an influence on me, and I'm willing to do this now, partially because of your encouragement. The other half is my wife, frankly. She was like, you actually I've had a million ideas. None of them have done anything. She's like, do something with this. This is a good idea. Actually do something. I was like, all right. And she's tolerated me going to all these conventions as a result. So I win. But in any case, but Teos was really one of the first people to back the Kickstarter and then tweet about it, which just got a lot more eyes on it. That got Adam Bradford's eyes on it, who again reached out very quickly saying he loved the idea and wanted to do the digital version. And then they did highlight it on Mastering Dungeons as well, because they'll highlight Kickstarters as well. Another person that I'd like to give a lot of thanks to is Egg Embry. He's a freelance writer in the TTRPG industry, and in particular with EN World, he'll do a Kickstarter spotlight. So it doesn't matter how big or small. If it's TTRPG, he puts it out there and brings some visibility to it. And that, I think, was another just notch in the belt in terms of this is the right path to getting more visibility on this. There's another group I'd like to highlight. It's the Bodhana group, which is a group. It's a nonprofit that actually uses role-playing games for therapy. They are licensed professionals. They have converted their business of providing counseling and therapy, I think, 100% into the RPG space. So they do have a convention called Save Against Fear that I believe is coming up in November. It's in Pennsylvania. And I've had the guy who runs it is Jack Birkenstock. Great guy. As soon as I met him, it's funny. I met him at Origins. He was at his booth and he was talking to somebody already. And I remember having the thought, this guy's a hugger. And we hadn't met before. We talked on the phone and that was it. But I just remember thinking, this guy's a hugger. And I am too, with the right people. I feel that's a great way to express your emotions towards somebody. And immediately when he got a chance to come talk to me, he's like, oh, great to meet you. Hey, can I get a hug? And I was like, nailed it. This guy is exactly his personality. He's such a great guy. but yeah, Save Against Fear convention in Pennsylvania. It's growing, and they're really, they're highlighting the deck. I'm giving to them at my cost. I'm like, just get it out there, just pay for the cost of it, and we'll get this going. So, and then lastly, some other ones. I mentioned World of Game Design earlier. I like Troy and Zach, who run that, are real genuine guys. I like hanging out with them. And my interactions with them, they quit their day job to do what they love, and they're being successful at it. They're doing it well. They're still growing. They're not the Wattsies. They're not that, and nobody will be that big, of course, in the space, but they're doing what they do well, and carving out a pretty good footprint for themselves. So, if you haven't checked out they're the ones I found at the Revolutionary War RPG at their booth. I was like, this exists? They're getting exposure on things that you wouldn't normally come across. But
I was also going to say, I just looked up their website, and Noir, there's a Highlander RPG that they're working on.
Yep. Yeah. So just a lot of people who have been real positive, real supportive, and helped me along in this journey and trying to make this, again, to get the right tabletop safety tool for the industry.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the Highlander.
It's actually a card game. Slow zoom.
Slow zoom. All right, that was smooth. That was good at it.
I am very happy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, see, the thing I love about this segment is there are so many people out here working in the space that it's very hard to see everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I have not heard of Mastering Dungeon, and I'm looking at their YouTube, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get in on this. This is good. This is good stuff. Like, and I've never heard of it. So thank you for exposing us to new sections of this space. And I'm glad that everybody involved is giving a hand to this project. If there's anything that you need our RN to help with this, say the word. I love this deck. I cannot tell you how much I love this deck. And it really, honestly, guys, if you GM at all, it's worth it. It makes the beginning of the game go so fast, and you can GM with like a foundation of knowing what you can and cannot do, and it works with every safety tool possible. I have used every safety tool possible, and this is just a great addition. And it shows your players that you give a shit. And if you're playing with the GM that doesn't give a shit, you need to leave that table. So that said, thank you so much for joining us here today. We're gonna bully you to come back at some point. Especially when the digital comes out, because I would love to play with the creator of this deck. And I would love to see how you watch and critique how I use it. This is an incredible product. Incredible.
Well, thanks so much for that feedback. It means so much for me. It means it was, it was right to follow through. I think it's a good tool for the industry, and that feedback means a ton. So thank you for having me on. I was really, I've never done anything like this. I was nervous coming into it. But I know, having met you, even though it was brief at Gen Con, and I know you guys know how to have a conversation, and I feel you pulled it out of me. That's for sure. You really put me at ease. This was a great time.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you agreed to this. Like, I didn't have nearly as much time at Gen Con to talk to you as I wanted to, so I knew I had to have you. I knew I had to have you on. This can only get better. Like, and that's. There are terrible things out there that are only going to get better. So it's great to see something beautiful come out that can only get better. There's so much more that we can do with this, and it's already doing so damn much. I truly believe it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when with this thing. And I truly believe once the digital comes out and more people get used to it in the online space, the demand for the physical version for IRL games is gonna be outstanding, especially for conventions. I cannot tell you how hellish of an experience GMing for a convention can be, and this bailed me out of a lot of awkward shit. So
Then it did its job, and I can go to bed
it
knowing
really
it did its
did.
job. Yeah, no, that's great to hear.
Well, that has been, I think, on that note, I think that's been our episode of Morning Ritual.
Yeah.
I don't think of a better way to end it than that. Thank you all so much for stopping by. And once again, Tom, thank you for coming in and talking with us today. Deck of Player Safety is available at deckofplayersafety.com. But we're going to go through and we're going to do our outros. And we'll start with our guest. Tom, why don't you tell us who you are, where you can be found?
Yeah, again, deckofplayersafety.com really is the one stop to try and to get more information about it, the additional tools that accompany the deck, like demo videos, like the suggestions for swapping out various topics that might be pulled. So that's really the to place to find more information. I am old school on social media. You know, I'm still Facebook generation, but on Instagram is Deck of Player Safety, at Deck of Player Safety. Twitter, that was going to be my other beef because they blocked me for spamming threads asking, what are you working on? You know, and I was like, and after twice, like doing their, filling out their form to get, protest or whatever, appeal, I have yet to hear from them. So
I was wondering why that account was banned.
Yeah. Okay. You saw that. Yeah,
As part of my research, I was like, "Oh, there's a Twitter." No, there's not. There's not a Twitter.
I know. That's the only thing I can imagine is that because that's the only thing I did. I wasn't on Twitter before really, so I was like, I got to create a Twitter account, and there were all these threads about what are you working on Wednesday, and it's like, here's my Kickstarter, and I guess they wanted the advertising money. That's the only thing I could think because they haven't gotten back to me after 2 requests. So. Screw you, Twitter.
Very much so.
But I am on Threads with Deck of Player Safety as well. Instagram. I'm getting better at the social media stuff. Like I'll finish a session, cards will be on the table, everything, and I'll be like, oh damn, I should have snapped a picture. Post something, or with
please
Alicia
get
T.
that content.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not. That's not my primary function in life, but I'm working on it. So. But follow for updates and more importantly, to provide feedback. I want feedback from what's happening in the world. I am going to create a Discord. I've kind of created it. Again, that's kind of new to me to where people can exchange like, this is what I did, or this is the substitution I made, because I only have my ideas about what can work. I'd like to hear what real world examples are so people can share that and learn from it as well. So look for that. If that, again, the link to that will be on the website. Anybody who purchases a deck, I'm going to get them the link to the Discord. So if you want to join it, you can. If not, that's great too, just as long as you're being safe out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've been one of your hosts, Anita. You can find me here most times because I am the channel runner for Critical Misses. You can also find me on Twitter at Panita. And as for other places, just give me a follow on the socials and you can see exactly what I'm up to. Noir.
I'm Noir. You can find me all over the internet as the Noir Enigma. That's Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, the whole shebang. There's too many of these sites. I did not want to leave this show without letting y'all know these are $14. That's it. That's cake. Like that. What? Like I just saw the price. It's 14. Get these goddamn cards. It's not even $20. Are you out of your mind? You can't even get a set of dice for $14. Buy these motherfucking cards.
Oh, you heard the man.
I'm actively upset at the price.
No excuses.
$14 for your player safety. If you don't get these motherfucking cards, I'm gonna have a problem with it.
Well, I think I have no notes on that. We're gonna head on out of here, and we're gonna go on a raid. Who are we gonna say hello to today after we're done here?
Oh well, you know what? MS Society is doing a charity stream all day. Unfortunately, I was unable to join a game yesterday, but there's a fantastic game going on right now with Obo Lauren, Critical Bard, and a number of other fantastic players. Dungeon Dev, met him at JCon, really cool dude. Ted over at Nerd Immersion, I've heard nothing but great things from Sarah Battle. So go ahead, check it out. Be sure to donate. It's going to a good cause. Let's destroy MS. And also Barney's motherfucking cards. I cannot stress that enough. But that is our episode of Morning Ritual today.
And until next time, everybody, the ritual has concluded. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'm sorry, I just peeped the price.